You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
And then. Not the same one. Or maybe just, not the same anymore. The lights overhead were red and pulsing, dimmer than they should have been. The lens covers were clouded and rust-ringed. The walls were lined with trays of used gauze and metal tools soaking in nothing. My wrists were strapped down. Not with Velcro. With leather. Old, cracked, soaked through. There was movement beside me. A nurse. That's what my brain told me first. Her hips swayed with each step, but nothing about her was inviting. Her body moved like a threat pretending to be a promise. Like someone imitating seduction from memory. She paused below my waist. Her hand slipped under the gown. The latex was cold at first, but it warmed as she moved, drawing soft circles, lower and lower. All the while, she hummed a lullaby I didn't know. The second nurse raised the tray and tilted her head, like she was showing me her favorite toy. I sat up. My gown clung to my back with something warm and sticky. The air was colder than it should have been. I stood. Room 4 had a patient. She smiled when she saw me. Her teeth didn't match. Room 9 was the worst. A nurse stood behind the glass. One hand resting on her hip, the other slowly rubbing her inner thigh through the fabric. When she noticed me watching, she didn't stop. She shifted her stance like she wanted to be seen. And when she did, her skirt lifted, just enough to reveal it. Letter by letter. Me, sleeping. Then static. You scared us, the nurse said. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. You were out a little longer than expected. I asked her how long. She just smiled. Eventually, they said I was free to go. Discharged. A cab dropped me off outside my building like nothing happened. Like it was just a normal procedure. The apartment looked normal. Same couch. Same coffee stain on the carpet. But the scar was too long. Curved. Raised in a way that didn't match the procedure. I hadn't taken a shower. I decided to look up St. Emery Medical because I needed answers. The website was gone. An anonymous source claimed some staff were doing things that didn't follow medical procedures, extra incisions, strange scarring patterns, markings that didn't show up on any charts. The tile behind the fridge has yellowed and cracked. The hallway smells stronger now, like bleach trying to cover something deeper. I haven't opened it. Not since that night. But I hear movement on the other side. Gurneys rolling. Heels on tile. Steel trays clattering like teeth. I'm posting this now, while I still can. While the modem blinks and the laptop stays cool. If it's curved. If you wake up and the walls are wet.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
They Don't Send Lawyers, by the Big Craven. My name is Arthur. If you've read anything I've written before, you already know that I shouldn't be alive. A few months ago, I escaped a flooded and sealed facility, and discovered a secret global organization that's now trying to hunt me down. It's been a few weeks since I posted the first leak. I made sure to attach evidence, documents, diagrams, logs, everything I could prove. Yes, they were blurry, but also unmistakable. People saw it. And like I expected, most of them did nothing. Comment sections filled up with jokes and memes. A few deep dive threads actually popped up, to my surprise, but the ones that gained traction, they were the ones claiming it was an ARG, a hoax. The Thalassian Order didn't scrub the files. But they didn't deny them either. I underestimated the power and influence of the Order. I thought getting the truth out would be enough to convince people, but I didn't realize what I was up against. He warned me of what would happen. He told me that once the Order sees you as a breach, they don't send lawyers. They send something else. And he was right. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to when I first heard from him. No response. A voice came through, the voice of a calm and measured man. You don't need my name. Just know I'm not with them anymore. Them. He didn't need to clarify. The footage you took. The logs. You don't know how recognizable they are to the right people. If you post it without preparation, they'll find you. His voice was flat, but there was a hint of resentment in it. I could tell he was being sincere. And what did he mean by, not with them anymore? Because the Order doesn't keep secrets to protect people anymore. They keep them to protect themselves. They don't erase information, but drown it. They don't silence people, but discredit them. And when that fails, they escalate. He helped me organize the leak, in waves, not all at once. Photos first, then documents and personal logs. Nothing that could be traced directly back to a specific facility. He called me 5 minutes later. What the hell did you just do? I had to. People aren't taking it seriously. Take it down and pray that no one's seen it. Now. I thought he was exaggerating, but I listened to him. Although it was too late. I sat up instantly, my throat dry. All of my sleepiness disappeared. It means stay somewhere with a controlled climate. Keep any type of moisture low. No pipes or windows. A subject they managed to get under control. Or created, I'm not sure. Now it serves them. But it doesn't hunt like a person, it tracks environmental anomalies. Mostly moisture. That means if you sweat, it knows. If the walls are damp, it knows. If your breath fogs a mirror, you're already on thin ice. The line was quiet for a few seconds until I processed everything. Then a single sentence. I didn't reply, instead, my arms darted around the room. There was a draft I hadn't noticed before. A soft drip from the ceiling near the bathroom vent. My anxiety made me sweat. I wasn't safe in my own home. I packed what little I had and left in under 5 minutes. I even forgot to lock my door. I went to a motel and paid for a room there. Nothing big, I just had to make sure it was dry. I brought towels and paper napkins. Constantly wiped everything, my hands and face. The windows as well. I even taped plastic wrap over the bathroom mirror. I didn't sleep, I was too scared to even try. Just stayed up all night, waiting for Anonymous to call. But he didn't. But that same night, there was a sound at my front door. Not a knock or a voice, but a drip. One single droplet hitting a tile in the motel hallway. Right outside my door. I got off the bed and crept to the peephole, slowly, trying to be quieter than air itself. I looked through but saw nothing. A figure came into the peephole's view. It walked past my room, then seconds later walked past it again. It stopped right in front of my door. I backed away, and could feel my heart pounding in my throat. The drip sound returned, but louder now. The handle turned. I locked it, but it could somehow open it. Its skin wasn't really skin. It looked like wax soaked in a generous amount of water, pale and translucent in some places, discolored in others. The torso was longer than it should have been, but it wasn't necessarily tall. Fluid pulsed visibly beneath the surface, like something was still circulating. It was alive. Thin strands clung to its shoulders, fused into the waxy skin, not hanging like hair, but growing out of it, like nerves exposed to air. Then it ran at me. I barely dodged it, its hands scraping the wall beside me as I threw myself behind the bed. I grabbed the floor lamp and swung, which wasn't effective. The beast snatched it mid-air and bent the metal in half. I turned and bolted for the bathroom. The creature was obstructing the way outside, slamming the door shut behind me. There was no lock, so I wedged the trash bin under the handle. The mirror was taped so I couldn't see my face, but I could feel it was soaked, not just sweat, but the air around me. The thing's presence made the room wet. It was inescapable. Drip. Drip. A slow groan of metal and the door started bending inwards. The trash bin gave and the door swung open. I was trapped and it knew. My eyes darted up, the curtain rod. I pulled with everything I had and it came loose. It didn't cause any damage, but it gave me time to think. My fingers found the shattered edge of the hairdryer. Water. Electricity. I didn't wait to see if it was dead. I sprinted out of the bathroom, out of the motel room. Out of the entire building, in fact. I ran until my lungs gave out. Where I went next, I won't say. Not yet, at least. All you need to know is, I'm safe. It won't find me. I talked to Anonymous and he told me posting this will not pose a threat. Here, there are no windows, pipes, or moisture. Anonymous checks on me every so often. He sends me warnings and updates. He says the subject hasn't been seen since the motel, but that doesn't mean it's gone. Mostly. About why they exist. Why no one can touch them. Why truth isn't enough anymore. I have Anonymous telling me almost anything I ask him.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Part 2. It's been 3 weeks since I started working at Evergrove Market. The rules are changing, buyer Gufia. Believe it or not, I've made it 3 whole weeks in this nightmare. By now, I've realized something very comforting, sarcasm fully intended. The pale lady shows up every night at exactly 1:15 a.m. Every third night, the lights go out at 12:43 a.m. It's always my name. The only thing that changes is the freak show of customers after 2 a.m. On Wednesdays, it's an old woman with way too many teeth and no concept of personal space. Thursdays, a smooth-talking businessman in a sharp suit follows me around, asking for the latest cigarettes. Rule 4 is pretty clear. Do not acknowledge or engage with any visitors after 2 a.m. They are not here for the store. And the old man, my boss, well, he's always surprised to see me at the end of each shift. Not happy. Not relieved. $500 for another night of surviving hell. Less dead-eyed exhaustion, more pity. Or maybe fear. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me like I'd said something dangerous. He sat across from me, his eyes flicking toward the clock like something was counting down. This place, he said, voice low like he was afraid it might hear him, after midnight, it stops being a store. He took a breath like he'd just surfaced from deep water. He said the word like it tasted rotten. He looked at me then. Just for a second. Not with fear. With resignation. Like he'd already accepted, his answer was too late to help me. The name itself felt wrong. Too simple for something that didn't sound remotely human. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of every flickering shadow in the corners of the break room. The hum of the vending machine behind me sounded like it was breathing. How long have you been working here? I was 15. Came here looking for my dad. Found out later my dad got the same offer. Worked 4 nights. Just 4. Then vanished. No goodbye. No clue. Just, gone. Then he looked at me. And I swear, for the first time, he looked human, not like the tired crypt keeper who hands me my checks. But here's the thing, I still sleep like a rock. Every single night. It's a skill I picked up after years of dozing off to yelling matches through the walls. There wasn't anything left to do anyways. I'd already exhausted every half-rational plan to claw my way out of this waking nightmare. Nothing. Still, I gave it a shot. I asked her if they had anything on cursed buildings, haunted retail spaces, or entities shaped like oversized dogs with jaws that hinged the wrong way. But she didn't. And I walked out with nothing but more questions. Not just off, wrong. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, gravity whispering your name. Everything in me screamed, run. But the contract? The contract said don't. And I'm more scared of breaking that than dying. So I stepped inside. The reception was empty. No old man. No sarcastic remarks. No frost-covered coat. I checked the usual places, the haunted freezer, aisle 8, even the break room. My shift started quietly. Too quietly. It was Thursday, so I waited for the schedule to kick in. Pale lady at 1:15. The businessman around 3. Then the whispers. The lights. The routine nightmare. But tonight, the system failed. Just silence. He walked up to the front doors, pulled a laminated sheet from inside his jacket, and slapped it against the glass. No nod. No look. No goodbye. Same cursed format that had already ruined any hope of a normal life. Effective immediately. Cool. Starting strong. Because babies are terrifying now, apparently. 1. A second you may arrive at any time. Do not speak to them. Do not let them speak to you. If they say your name, cover your ears and run to the cleaning supply closet. Lock the door. Count to 200. Wait for silence. What the actual hell? 1. There will be a man in a suit standing just outside the front doors at some point. His smile will be too wide. He does not blink. Do not let him in. Do not wave. Do not turn your back. I blinked. Once. Twice. What the actual hell? April Fools. Except it's July. And no one here has a sense of humor, least of all me. I stared at one of the lines, as if rereading it would somehow make it make sense. Do not look at the sky. Run until your legs give out or the sun rises. Like someone had handed me the diary of a lunatic and said, live by this or die screaming. I didn't laugh. Because I've seen things. Things that defy explanation. Things that should not exist. I folded the page with shaking hands, slipped it into my pocket like a sacred text, and backed away from the front door. That shift. The front door creaked, not the usual automatic hiss and chime, but a long, slow swing like a church door opening at a funeral. I turned. And he walked in. Black shoes, polished like obsidian. Tall. Too tall to be usual but not tall enough to be impossible. And sharp, like someone had sculpted him out of glass and intent. Practiced, like a knife learning to grin. The temperature dropped the moment he stepped over the threshold. Eyes like static, glass marbles that shimmered with a color I didn't have a name for. A color that probably doesn't belong in this dimension. Right then, I knew why the old man warned me. Why he flinched every time I brought up promotions. Because this was the one who offers them. The thing called the night manager stared back. No blinking. No breathing. And then, in a voice that slid under my skin and curled against my spine, he said, "Welcome to Phase 2.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name."
It started innocuously enough. A weekend trip to my uncle's old house in the woods for a little family reunion. The house had been in our family for generations, standing lonely at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by looming pines and the occasional eye of a curious deer. My uncle, a retired history professor, had filled his home with relics and artifacts collected over decades, each with a story that made the air thick with nostalgia. On Saturday night, after the adults had enjoyed their share of wine and stories, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows stretched as if eager to engulf the corners of the room. The group began regaling each other with urban legends and local folklore, tales that seeped fear into the unwary hearts of listeners. That's when my cousin, Allison, a few years younger than I, leaned in close and whispered about the hollow-eyed woman a spirit said to haunt the woods surrounding the house. Of course, being the eldest, and, in my mind, the most rational, I scoffed and dismissed her tales, but Allison's eyes sparkled with a fervor that was unsettling. I merely smiled, ruffled her hair, and told her she was being dramatic. The adults moved on, oblivious to the rare chill that had started to settle over me. I hesitated, aware of the warnings refracting back into my mind. But the allure was strong. It felt wrong to indulge in my curiosity, yet I stepped off the porch and into the garden. The moonlight filtered through the canopy of trees, illuminating an uneven path curling deeper into the woods. That voice, how it coiled around my thoughts. It felt like an invitation, perhaps a puzzle waiting to be solved. The deeper I walked, the more the trees closed in around me, the air enveloping me in stillness that was heavier than before. I called out, trying to make sense of the silence, but all that echoed back was the creaking of branches and a rustle of leaves. Just as panic began to wiggle into my chest, I caught sight of something in the distance, a pale shape among the dark trunks, a drifting figure. "Come closer." The voice was no longer warm, it was a low, rasping sigh, like dead leaves stirring. I did not move. In that moment, the fear that had gripped my insides twisted into something worse, a crushing sorrow. I felt as though she were unearthing every remorseful thought I had ever buried, every secret I wished remained undiscovered. Every shameful moment surfaced as I was drawn closer against my will. The chill of the night wrapped tightly around me, each breath pulling me further into her abyss. I took a cautious step forward, a branch snapping beneath my foot, and she turned sharply, her hollow eyes locking onto mine with a feral intensity. "Follow," she whispered, and again, I was compelled, stumbling after her. I moved deeper into the woods, the underbrush clawing at my legs, the sounds of the night fading as I ventured further into the darkness. But then, in an instant, she turned toward me, her expression shifting into something I dared not comprehend. Now you're mine," she hissed, her beauty twisting into malevolence as her figure morphed, becoming a glimmering shadow of despair. That's when I realized I'd lost my bearings. I had no idea which direction led back to the house. I was trapped in a caged forest, and the laughter of the woman turned to howls as the trees closed in around me. A fleeting terror surged within me, and I fought against the compulsion. I turned to run, heart pounding. I darted through the trees, branches scraping at my skin, but when I turned back, she was still there, the glistening darkness at my heels, her whispers morphing into screams. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes bled into hours, my thoughts hacked apart by panic. Finally, I broke free from the woods and collapsed onto the familiar ground of the backyard, gasping for breath. The moon hung hauntingly still above, as if it had known my struggle. I stood trembling at the foot of the porch stairs, terrified to look back. I rushed inside, slamming the door shut, my heart hammering to drown out the echoes that lingered in the night. I can still feel their watchful gaze, the dread that lingers like a shroud, swelling within me as I lie awake. Each shadow in my room stretches and distorts into something familiar, the reminder of the woman in the woods, with those hollow eyes that promised everything but betrayed me.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
My neighbor has been mowing his lawn for 12 hours straight, Binds Lewis. It started at 4:43 a.m. The noise jolted me awake. It sounded like there was a giant truck revving its engine right there in our bedroom. Exhaust fumes wafted in through the open window. It was a bad way to start the day. "What is that?" moaned my wife. We'd both slept poorly, because our daughter had crawled into our bed at 1 a.m. and kept kicking us in the face until we were both half hanging off the bed while she snored away. "No way can I sleep through that racket," said Vanessa. She rolled out of bed and shut the window. That helped a little, but it still sounded like war out there. She pulled the curtains back and looked through the window. "It's the fucking neighbor. Mowing his lawn. Before the sun is up. We need to have a heart-to-heart with him. Let him know that's not okay." Keegan, our daughter, woke up crying. "Bring me some too," said Vanessa. "Papa, bring me some Smarties," said Keegan. No. No Smarties for breakfast. Banana. Or toast. But not Smarties. He never did. He just stared straight ahead and kept pushing the mower. "Hey!" I shouted. But it was no good. I could barely hear myself, and so I knew that he wouldn't be able to hear me from across the lawn, right behind the lawnmower. I shrugged and was getting ready to turn back to my house when I saw a trickle of what was presumably urine run down his bare leg. I went back to my house and opened the door. Vanessa was reading a book to Keegan. She stopped when I came in and looked up. Well, that gave her something to think about anyway. "Ha," said Vanessa. Said Vanessa. "That is strange. Do you think he's okay? Should we call somebody?" I shrugged. "Who are we going to call? The police? Tell them that our retired neighbor is mowing his lawn twice while peeing himself? What will they say to that?" "Why does Mr. Limsky keep mowing his lawn?" asked Keegan. "Yay." "Of course," I said. I felt like going back to sleep myself, even after all that coffee, but the desire to get far away from the sound of the lawnmower outweighed my tiredness. We ate, then Keegan and I headed to the playground. 9:30, I'm really starting to get worried. This isn't normal. I sighed, but complied. I rounded up the kid and drove home. I felt a deep sense of unease, that grew more intense the closer I got to home. I turned onto my street and prayed that Mr. Limsky would be done mowing the lawn by now. He'd tell us it was just a practical joke and we'd all have a good laugh over it. But soon enough, I saw that wasn't going to happen. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw that he was still out there. I thought I saw a streak of brown running down his leg, but it was hard to tell for sure because he was going around under the shade of his ancient apple tree. I walked inside and Vanessa was at the kitchen table with bags under her eyes and a glass of wine in front of her. "Please make it stop," she said. "Fine," she said. "It's just that I do everything else around here, so I thought maybe you could help this one time." I held my tongue. I did plenty around there, but I knew that now wasn't the time to point that out. "Okay," I said. "I'll call the police." How has he not run out of gas by now, anyway? "I've been watching him," said Vanessa. "He's got a can of gas in his driveway. Sometimes he grabs it when he passes by and gasses up while still pushing the mower. It's crazy. Please call the police." All right, I said. I looked up the number and proceeded to have one of the most awkward phone conversations of my life. It was 10 minutes with the receptionist, and then another 10 minutes with an officer. Finally, they agreed to come over and check it out. The cop was waving his hands and shouting, but it was no good. Then the cop grabbed Mr. Limsky's shoulder and spun him around forcefully. This caused Mr. Limsky to finally let go of the throttle, and for the first time all day, the lawnmower stopped moving. It was still running though, because he had taped its safety shut-off down. Mr. Limsky opened his mouth, and something emerged from it. It looked like a long, thin tentacle. The tentacle wrapped itself around the cop's neck, and lifted him up into the air. Then a second tentacle emerged from Mr. Limsky's mouth, and made its way down the cop's throat. I slammed the curtains shut and noticed that I too, like Mr. Limsky earlier, had wet myself. I didn't have a good answer, so I didn't say anything. "Honey," said Vanessa, walking over. "Are you okay?" The cop was out there going around the old apple tree with a weed whacker while Mr. Limsky was back pushing the lawnmower around again. And number X200B. Part 2.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
This has happened every single time I've tried to leave. I keep my phone in the bathroom with me when I'm showering. I live alone, so I keep it with me just in case, for safety. The first thing I did was call my parents. My dad didn't pick up, but my mum did. I tried to explain the situation to her, but she couldn't seem to understand how I was trapped in my bathroom if the door could open. She seemed convinced that I must mean that my bathroom door's lock was broken and I was trapped inside. Regardless, she said that she would be over ASAP. She only lives a 15-minute drive away, so she should be here any moment. Me, what do you mean? Me, yes, I'm in here. Are you here? Mom, I'm outside the bathroom door. I've been calling your name. I can see my landing, my stairs, my front door, but no Mom. I tried to walk out, but it was fruitless. Back staring at the closed bathroom door. My mum tried the handle of the door from her side, but it won't open. She brought tools to unscrew the lock. She says she's doing it now, but I can't hear anything, and I can't see the handle moving. Okay, Mum texts me to say the lock is taken out, but the door still won't open on her side. She looked through the circular hole in the door where the lock was, but just saw my bathroom. Empty. I don't know what to do. Scratch that, the window won't open either. There are locks on the windows in my house, you can lock them with a little key, but I never received any when I moved in, so I've never been able to lock them. It's locked now though. Wait, it opened. I didn't notice how dark it was outside. It shouldn't be dark, it's midday. My window's closed. I never felt myself move, but my window's closed. Even the fucking plastic blind is back in place. I'm sat on the floor now, as far away from the window and door as I can get. I feel sick. Mum came back, along with her work friend. He helped her unscrew the hinges and remove the door. I'm not in there. They can't see me. My mum sent a photo of her inside the bathroom, with no me. She thinks this has all been a joke, and is refusing to reply to my texts or answer my calls. I'm on 14% battery, I don't know if I will ever get to leave. This might be my only chance to say goodbye to my mum, but she won't answer her phone. I looked out the window again. I think I heard a rumbling. Low, quiet rumbling. I haven't opened the window since. My phone's on 1%. If I get out, I will update this post. If no edit comes, assume I'm still here.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
My entire childhood I saw a shadow person in the corners of my eyes, now I think it's coming back, by Purisias Nota Victim. I remember when we were taking our 3rd grade class photo, due to how the students were arranged August ended up in the stand directly behind me, as I had to kneel in the front due to having the curse of an end of alphabet last name. Being a reserved and timorous kid, I had a strange aversion to smiling in photos, but for this class photo August found it funny to whisper certain phrases we both found hilarious as he stood behind me in an attempt to make me, finally, smile in a class photo. I remember the flash going off as I cracked up to August's muttering of the pin gas line from the YouTube video we both saw as the peak of comedy at the time. When the photos arrived in the mail a few weeks later, my mother remarked with a smile how it was nice to finally have a picture where I looked happy. Anyways, the first sort of encounter happened in those earlier days. The autumn where August and Orion were still allowed to come over. My siblings and I had just gotten home from school. I was tired, those first few days of school always seemed to drain my energy faster, and so I said my farewells to August outside my home promising he could come over the next day. Simon, however, invited Orion over for a while. I went inside, eating my small after-school snack, and then made my way to the living room to watch the last moments of daytime TV with my mother. I wouldn't admit it then, but I actually loved watching those talk shows and reality dramas that would play all day in the early 2010s before the evening and nighttime programming began. I was sitting there for a half hour or so when my brother came inside from playing with Orion in the yard. He told us Orion had gone home for dinner and made his way to his room. Around a half hour later, I began seeing movement outside the front window. A human shape crossing the window every couple of minutes, right up against the side of the house where the walkway from the driveway was. I remarked to my mom how it was strange that Orion was still there in our yard even after Simon had come inside, and she just muttered in response, her eyes still glued to the TV. I told her I was going outside, which she once again barely gave any indication of comprehension to, and I stepped out the front door into the cool air of a sunsetting September evening. Nobody was there. I checked the front yard and backyard, expecting to find Orion pacing around stuck in his own thoughts as he often did, but there was nobody. I asked Simon again later that night and he insisted Orion went home when he said so, even claiming to have watched Orion walk all the way back to his house 3 lots away. I wasn't convinced though, and assumed our unusual neighbor had partaken in his usual peculiar activities. As I said, it was common for me to see him pacing around for upwards of half an hour just thinking to himself. I saw it at school, I saw it when he was at our house, I even saw it in the Green's backyard sometimes when I passed by on a solitary walk. I rationalized it as Orion doing his usual, and I continued on believing that. Until I saw the figure again. Unless it was trash day, our trash can stood halfway up our driveway, alongside the house. The driveway then continued back another 50 or 60 feet to the garage, which sat against the back of our backyard, its rear wall marking the property line. That's where I saw it. In the liminal blue hour of mid-autumn in Minnesota, where the indigo landscape contrasted with the yellow-orange leaves, creating a beautiful sight that echoed the color palette of a Van Gogh painting and evoked you with a strange nostalgic feeling. The time of day that made you self-reflect on your year, and realize, finally, that winter was approaching. The year was nearing its end. The evenings spent outside amongst bonfires and orange-hued streetlights were waning, and you'd be spending your nights inside until the spring. It was here that I saw a dark, humanoid figure standing beside our garage. It seemed to be watching me, though I couldn't make out any of its features, so I couldn't be sure of which direction it was truly facing. "Do you see that?" August asked me in a too calm voice with a too calm expression. "See what?" I continued bouncing, staring up at the trees above. "Yeah," I responded. "I see it a lot." "Me too," I responded. "What is it?" I still don't know why it was so casual for us. I guess that's just how things are when you're a kid. We had no reason to be afraid of this thing, neither of us had any experiences similar. We didn't watch horror movies or true crime TV shows, we didn't know of all the evil that the world had to offer, paranormal or not. To us, this was just another thing we saw throughout our day. It was no different from the squirrels that darted across the street as you walked by, or the dragonflies that always seemed to slam into the side of your face in the summertime. It was just something that was there. "What did?" I asked, confused by his wording. "The Shadow Man," August mumbled. "He was outside my room. He told me I should come with him." "I don't know." But I told him no. "I'm fine here," August explained, his eyes drawn to the wood chips below. 5th grade was the final year of elementary school. Upon its completion, August and I would be middle schoolers. We would no longer walk the 3 blocks to school every day, instead we'd take the bus. We wouldn't have recess or cubbies, we'd have passing time and lockers. We'd have class schedules where we'd have to find our way around the school, slowly finding the optimal path between each of our classes. We'd be independent. I think that transition, or at least the looming presence of its arrival, really changes you. You begin to have the realization that your childhood, your true childhood, is over. You realize you need to grow independence, you need to find out who you are. I think it was because of this that August and I grew apart that year. I wasn't too sad, however. I had new friends. Much more positive and diverse friends, with different interests and topics of conversation. I didn't need a bizarre loner who bit people in my life. So when the 6th grade began that following autumn, I didn't look for August in each of my classes, or between them for that matter. I didn't find his homeroom or his locker. What's strange about this all now is that, not only did I not go out of my way to find August, I didn't see him at all. We lived down the street from each other, and yet I never saw him at the bus stop or on the bus. That's explainable, maybe his parents, in line with their pampering ways, drove him to school every day. That still didn't explain why I didn't ever see him in the hallways between classes, not a single time within the 3 years of middle school or the 4 following years of high school. I never got assigned a class with him, I never saw him across the lunchroom. Nothing. All of this is only slightly perturbing at best, I know, but all of these memories suddenly returned to me recently. They had never left, of course, I just hadn't thought about them in a while. Upon recalling my childhood spent alongside August, I was curious enough to go back to my parents' home for a brief visit, whereupon I dug through the basement storage in search of my elementary school yearbooks. I found all 5 and began scanning through them, purely interested in seeing my childhood friend's face again after so many years. I was excited to have a real photo of him to remember, to make those moments in my memory more accurate. To my surprise, however, he wasn't there. I checked all 5 yearbooks. There was never an August Green in my class. There was never an August Green in my school. Frantically, I flipped through my 3rd grade yearbook to the class pictures section, skimming through the pages until I saw Mrs. Benson's 3rd grade class. There I was, kneeling in the front row, frowning like usual. What about the car? The trampoline? I stammered. I don't know, maybe they haul stuff around a lot. My mom offered as an explanation. Maybe they have nieces or nephews, I don't know. What's gotten into you? Why are you so upset? She shouted back. I still don't know what to believe. Maybe I'm insane, maybe I have a brain tumor or a carbon monoxide leak, I don't know. All I know is that my memories are real, my childhood cannot be a lie. This has shattered my mind, destroyed my entire worldview and taken the possibility of sleep away from me for weeks at least. I have no idea what happened, but I know I have to hold it together. The Shadow Man. She yelled in that excited toddler way. He followed us all the way here from our house.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
I'm a SWAT officer who was called to deal with an incident at a middle school. But for some reason, we can't enter room 203, by Mr. Outlaw. And number X200B. And number X200B. The worst cases are the ones with kids involved. I have a niece who's innocent and carefree beyond comprehension. My skin crawls thinking about her being exposed to those kinds of situations. Safe to say, I wasn't looking forward to whatever task laid ahead of us when we were called in. When we arrived, there were already 6 or 7 police vehicles parked outside, with a massive crowd of evacuated students standing outside. A lot of them looked a combination of utterly shocked and terrified, like they'd just been chased through a cemetery by a machete-wielding demon. And number X200B. As we entered the building, we were getting caught up to date by one of the police officers. But he was hardly any help. And number X200B. We don't know what to do, they're in room 203, but we can't go in there. And number X200B. He stumbled out a mostly incoherent response, skin pale and eyes wide as he did so. From his expression, you'd assume that he'd been to hell, or something of a comparable nature. Obviously, we weren't taking this lightly. We tried getting more information out of him, but he was adamant that he didn't know anything beyond the fact that we couldn't go into the room under any circumstances. And number X200B. And number X200B. It wasn't really what we expected. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just a room. However, it wasn't silent in there. We approached the door cautiously, listening intently to what was going on inside. It sounded like a teacher giving a standard lecture. But obviously, that wouldn't have warranted a school-wide evacuation and subsequent police backup. And number X200B. Still, we had to figure out a plan. I tried listening closer, in an attempt to discern what the person was saying. Now, I wasn't sure if they were speaking too quietly or if they were using another language entirely, but I couldn't make out anything explicit. And number X200B. Eventually, Dex stepped up, banging on the door. And number X200B. Fuck it, Dex said, frustrated. Hate dealing with crazy fucks. He pulled out a radio and began talking to another unit. Soon enough, 2 more teams were on their way, one to monitor the windows from outside, and one to take a position in the room directly under 203. We were trying to consider every possible angle here. And number X200B. And number X200B. This is some bullshit, Axwell, another officer, said. If they end up never telling us anything, are we just gonna wait here forever? The kids might die of natural causes instead. And number X200B. I wasn't going to be the one to say it, but I sure was thinking it. There were no easy solutions for situations like these. Another 5 minutes elapsed before the ground team showed up, announcing to us over the radio that they were making their way over to the room underneath. The radio crackled once again. Hey Dex. Dex picked it up. Yeah. Something wrong. What? What the fuck are you talking of, Dash? You finished? Can we talk now? He asked. And number X200B. We tried getting him to talk, but he wouldn't budge. In fact, he wouldn't move an inch from his bizarre position. At that point, I was beginning to panic hard. This evidently wasn't a normal situation at all. Lee was also frustrated, banging on the door and barking out orders as if whatever fucked up entity lurking in the room cared at all about his grievances. And then he made a drastic mistake. He took his rifle and began breaking the door down with it. He managed to get about halfway through before succumbing to whatever fate Jensen had just before him. I turned around, seeing him also covering his eyes, frozen in the position on the ground. I tried not to look at the purple light flowing out from the holes in the door as I made eye contact with Axwell. We were both ready to get the fuck out of there. I took the lead, rushing towards the stairwell. But after about 2 seconds of running, I heard a scream from behind me. Some kind of large insect-like appendage shrouded in a dark violet smoke had burst through one of the holes, grabbing him by the waist. I reckon that if I were a single second later, it would have done the same to me as well. I tried shooting at the thing, but my bullet simply bounced off. It pulled Axwell in shortly after, demolishing the door with it. The room was completely open now, but I wasn't planning on investigating. And number X200B. Just like that, I was the last man standing. I bolted down the stairwell, and through the first-floor hall, only to find the path to the nearest exit blanketed in the same smoke that was coming off of the appendage. There was no way in hell I was going to try traversing through it. I picked up my radio, attempting to contact the floor unit instead. And number X200B. 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 Oh, come on, I muttered. And number X200B. I did as I was told, stumbling into a stray classroom and barricading the door behind me. The room I'm in now doesn't have any windows, so I can't tell what's going on outside. I've been checking for news updates on my phone, but nothing. I'm also averse to using my radio to call for help, because it might give my position away. I don't know what the hell's lurking out there in the hallways, but I can certainly hear something moving around. Not sure how far it is, though.
Hey! You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
I'm the only woman at my IT job and now I know why, by Peculiar. I was fresh out of college and desperately looking to start a career that didn't involve serving burgers, wiping down storefront shelves, or bringing stuffy old businessmen their coffee. On average, I was applying to 6 jobs a week and going to maybe half as many interviews. I knew my major in English wasn't likely to be met with high demand, but I honestly thought my options would prove more promising. Still, I remained optimistic, persevered, and only applied to comfortable office jobs with benefits. It wasn't good for my bank account, but it nourished what little pride I had left. During my first week, I had to work the regular 9-to-5 shift so I could be online at the same time as my manager, who was working from a different city. Afterward, I would work on the regular support schedule, a 4-day cycle of 1-day shift, 1 night shift, 2 days off, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. respectively. On my first day, I dressed smartly in a loose sweater and long skirt. Perceptively aware that IT departments are mostly male, I didn't want to draw unnecessary attention by dressing provocatively or inappropriately. The guy at the front desk seemed regular enough. He introduced himself as Tom before helping me fill out some paperwork and guiding me to a desk in the large open-plan workspace. I stared at the countless desks as we walked, finding it difficult to meet the eyes of the men that sat behind them. I saw no other girls in the workspace, which was unusual and somewhat unsettling. Tom's relaxed demeanor could not make up for the immediate hostility aimed at my presence. The air seemed to seep out of the room as I felt my new coworkers chant, "You don't belong here," in silent unison. It surprised me when Tom stopped at a desk that was extensively decorated with printed memes, bright pink floral stickers, and a small tattered teddy keychain that lay behind the monitor. Apart from these artifacts, there was a thick layer of dust coating the keyboard, monitor, and desk space. Tom was skeptical, but a sweeping glance around the room confirmed that there were no other free desks for me to occupy. The rest of the day went by in a haze. I learned about my tasks, which were to answer support-related phone calls and create new tickets in the system. I had to monitor all incoming chats and written tickets and sort them by level of urgency and type. I wouldn't be required to offer any technical advice, but I had to become well acquainted with the product software. Since I wasn't answering any calls yet, I immersed myself in the manual. I didn't understand a lot of it and spent most of my time Googling networks, black and white box testing, database security, and other things. My manager checked in just before lunch and seemed slightly disappointed by my overall grasp of the material. Feeling like a failure, I took a break to clean the desk. I got up to find Tom and ask him for a cloth for my countertop. I instantly regretted my decision. Every eye in the room was upon me the moment I rose. I couldn't stare back to confirm, but there was a surreal hush as I made my way back down the workspace. The familiar clatter of keyboards had noticeably diminished, as my face grew warm and self-conscious. I noticed myself hunching forward slightly as I walked, a weak attempt at becoming less visible. Before turning off to the passage that led to the front desk area, I dared to meet the eyes of one of the shameless gawkers. I don't know what I was expecting, but the sight of a sneering hooded programmer sent a chill down my spine. He was around my age but didn't seem the least bit ashamed or uncomfortable by my confrontation. There was a cruel smile playing on his thin lips as he eyed my exposed ankles before turning his attention back to the screens in front of him. I wondered how he would feel if I eyed his long, pimpled neck in the same manner. It was the same as I walked back to my chair with a box of computer wipes. I'm just here to grab some coffee, and if you doubt my candidacy for this job, you can take your concerns to HR directly. I continued, enjoying the shocked and somewhat nervous faces of my offenders gang. Good, I wanted them to feel a fraction of the discomfort I had been dealing with all day. Opting to enjoy my snack far away from my coworkers, I walked back to my desk with my head held high and a mug of coffee. Right as I was about to sit and enjoy my frothy treat, I saw I had a text message from a withheld number. "You have quite an attitude, don't you?" I froze, hovering over my desk with the mug in one hand and my phone in the other. As I was attempting to process this grave breach of boundaries, I received 2 more messages within the same chat window. One was a naked photograph that I had sent my first serious college boyfriend. The second read. So that's what I did. Throughout my week of training, I came in to work on time, never leaving my desk except to go to the bathroom. I avoided contact with everyone and kept my eyes drawn to inanimate objects only. Thanks to S. Brooks, I kept on top of my training. For every new task from my manager, there was a corresponding entry in her notebook. There were no more horrible texts or face-to-face confrontations, but there was something else that stirred my anxieties afresh. Last Friday was my final day of training, which brought me to the last entry in the notebook. Have Skype open with credit for emergencies in case of disabled mobile service. The list made little sense. Firstly, HR made it clear that I was allowed to sleep between 2 to 5 a.m., provided I kept the office smartphone nearby. They even had a pull-out couch in one of the conference rooms for this purpose. Secondly, the entire job was answering calls, so there would always be a way to call from the office phone, right? Lastly, the measures outlined in the guide seemed excessive and paranoid. Perhaps the list was satirical. Maybe this Brooks girl felt just as awkward as I did with all the silent, leering male coworkers. Though my brain worked hard to rationalize this list of precautions, a nagging feeling in my gut told me I was missing something crucial. It came to me as I was leaving work on Friday, my last day of training. "Sure thing," he responded, smiling warmly, his pleasant features a far cry from those of the sullen men in the main room. "You have to ask your manager about that. Most likely they're scattered across the country." "Pretty normal for that to be the case," he replied, already dismissing me as he went back to his final tasks of the week. "Yes, another girl held your position for a short while," Tom said, still looking at his screen, though I noticed he had stopped typing or moving his mouse. He was staring pointedly at a single spot behind his monitor. "See ya," he said, watching me questioningly as I left. All weekend I mulled over the events of my first week at work. It felt as though Tom wasn't telling me something important. There was no reason for him to grow so tense at the mention of the girl who had worked there before me. Could someone have complained about Sam before? Could it have been S. Brooks? Was Sam the reason for the survival guide in the notebook? Why did she quit? A million theories disturbed my weekend lounging. Before I knew it, it was time to go back to work. This is where we've almost caught up to present events. Yesterday was Monday, the first regular day shift. It passed in a blur, as I frantically answered the phone, recording, sorting, and assigning dozens of customer complaints in our system. It took getting used to, and by the end of the day, I was absolutely exhausted. Just as I was signing off, I received another ominous text from an unknown number. Now, this was the first text to fill me with true fear. I quickly looked around to see if Sam was still at work so I could confront him for sending the message, but he had already left for the day. After calming myself down, I headed home and tried to find S. Brooks online. My best bet was LinkedIn, and I looked through all the women that had proficient technologies listed on their profiles. They were suspiciously few. Finding nothing, I looked through Tom's list of friends and finally found what I was looking for. There was a girl by the name of Sierra Brooks listed as unemployed. I sent a friend request with a message introducing myself and asking her if she had ever been harassed by one of her previous coworkers. Finally, feeling like I was getting somewhere, I went to bed and braced myself for the next day's events. Finally got to the cookies, huh? I was about to head into the workspace when a call came in on the work phone. I positioned myself safely against a kitchen wall, knife in hand, before answering with the standard customer support greeting. There was static on the other end, some clanking noises, followed by complete silence. Glancing at the phone, I saw that it had switched off. I tried to start it up again, but it wouldn't turn on. Great, now I had to make it back to my computer in case any more calls came in. I remembered Sierra's guide as I was slipping the dead device back in my pocket. Had this happened to her as well? The instructions in the notebook made a lot more sense, and I cursed myself out loud for being so ill-prepared. As soon as the words escaped my mouth, there was another ominous bing from the phone. I pulled it out and tried to unlock it, but the regular home screen didn't come up. All that came up was a white screen with a short bit of text on it. Tut tut. Ladies really shouldn't use that sort of language. Why don't you come out and play? Don't bother taking that knife with you. It won't do much against my gun. I screamed hellfire, jerking my leg away and running as fast as my legs could take me. I heard some commotion close behind me, followed by a loud bang, which I interpreted as my assailant giving chase after me. Before I knew it, I was descending the 3 flights of stairs and rushing out the doors past the startled night guard. The freezing air prickled my skin through my thin sweater as I approached a nearby pedestrian for help. They called 911, and the police were at the office space within the hour. As I awaited with the guard for their arrival, I kept thinking of Sierra's written warnings, and how stupid I had been to dismiss them. / check every aisle, meeting room. Don't forget to check under desks, balcony, kitchen tables, behind cooler. So, you had the knife with you when running from the kitchen to your desk. Are you sure? Asked the older detective, who had introduced himself as Senior Investigator Barnshaw. Yes, I stammered nervously. I believe I did. I was panicking, so it's hard to say. Then there was the pig toy, I said, losing my train of thought. And you believe the person who was harassing you was Samuel Guilford, said the other detective, whose name I couldn't remember. He wore no badge. And one more time, just for the record, what happened when you dialed 911, asked Barnshaw for the 3rd time that night. Samuel Guilford was found lying dead not far from your desk when our officers came on the scene. Did you see his body when you were running out of the office? Asked the other detective, feigning an air of innocence while dropping this bombshell. He was stabbed to death with a large kitchen knife. His body was covered in 23 stab wounds, Barnshaw explained. And we found the knife wedged in his mouth, pinning him to the floor through his throat. I eyed both detectives mutely, straining to focus when my mind seemed to have lost all clarity. Your story checks out for the most part. We found his phone riddled with amateur hacking apps, continued the senior detective. We found several naked photographs of you and all the texts you've mentioned. He had a gun in his hand and we found the bullet he fired as you fled. What we don't understand is how he died, added the second detective, keenly gauging my reaction. It's okay if you killed him in self-defense, Gemma. The guy was a creep. It was just yesterday that Mississippi Brooks came by to drop all charges against Samuel, said the younger detective. We are currently attempting to track her down and bring her in for questioning. I'm sure you can see how your knowledge of her name gives us cause for concern. The police kept up their line of questioning until someone brought Barnshaw a note. Forensics had drawn up a report on the fingerprints found on the knife, as well as the blood spatter patterns. I was asked to submit some DNA samples to aid the investigation and finally released to go home. Don't worry, sis. I took care of it, free.
You're still tuned to Horace Lop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Who was my father? My question cut like a blade through the somber silence of the dining room. My mother shot me her signature glare, but it was especially threatening in this moment. What? She growled. Don't tell me you're going deaf already. I retorted, entranced by confidence. You disgusting little cretin. How dare you speak to me like that? She leapt out of her chair and it scraped on the hardwood floor like nails on a chalkboard. She grabbed the wooden paddle from the counter and stormed towards me. She didn't even bother telling me to turn around. She swung straight for my face, but I caught it before it could make impact. My hand stung and in a fit of rage I snatched the paddle from her and began beating her with it. I wanted to cry, but there was no time. We needed to leave and fast. I told my siblings to pack a bag each and I ran upstairs to do the same. When I was done, I ran into my mom's room. This was my last chance to find the answers I'd been looking for and I wasn't going to waste it. I dug around in her things. I checked drawers, cabinets, closets. There had to be something. An old photo album, a letter, something. I stood in the middle of her room and took a moment to think when the Jesus painting that hung over her bed caught my eye. A swarm of bad memories flooded my mind. I leapt towards it and threw it off the wall and onto the floor. I began to read the records and my hope turned into confusion and gut-wrenching fear. They were results from fertility tests and they were negative. This had to be a mistake. Of course my mom could get pregnant, she had kids. I threw the papers aside and reached back into the hole. I pulled out a stack of 3 books. They were spell books. Not like pagan ones, like satanic ones. I flipped through them in a last attempt to find anything. I only got through the first one and halfway through the second before I came to a page that had been annotated. It was tilted, pregnancy spell, offer up your womb for the seed of the king. I keep me and my siblings fed by stealing from local gas stations, as that's all there really is out here. It's not much, but it's enough. I've also taken up the job of providing my siblings with an education. We were homeschooled, so that's all I really have to go off, but I think they're doing well. It's beginning to become clear to me now that something has to change soon. I can't keep forcing my siblings to live like this. They deserve a proper education, a reliable food source, a home. So I'm writing this in the hopes that someone will take pity on us and find it in their heart to lend a helping hand. I don't expect that to happen. After all, I am a murderer and possibly the son of Satan. Sorry, bad joke. Anyway, that's all there really is to say right now. I'll probably post an update if this post gets any attention, but for now I have to go and deal with my brother. His horns have started coming in, so it's been non-stop whining and crying for the past 2 months. Puberty, right?
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
At 11 p.m. on Sunday night, I got one while downloading free stock images. It was a photo of a path through the forest. I pressed verify. No. She wasn't the only person. I rubbed my eyes and stared at the image. The image had changed. The arm at the edge of the photo was now further in the frame, taking up 3 squares instead of 2. Bulky shoulders and dark jeans followed it. The image blinked. Select all squares with people. I leapt back from the computer. The image was different again. The man was further in the frame, taking up 5 squares. His hand was stretched out towards the jogger, just inches from her shoulder. She was turned towards him, eyes wide. Mouth open in a silent scream. Loading. The hood of his sweatshirt was pulled tightly over his head. A translucent Halloween mask poked out from underneath, pressed against his features. Click, click, click. Verify. I passed the reCAPTCHA. Backslash backslash backslash. The woman matched the description of a local woman, Kaylee Johnson. She went missing a week ago, during an afternoon jog on the wooded Lakewood Trail. She was never found. BD.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I ain't much for writing, but I figured before I'd done anything too stupid, I oughta tell someone what lead me to done it in the first place. Looking back at him, turns out he was so quiet 'cause he was right in the middle of the second most intense staring contest of his life. I tracked his eyes about 50 feet up the ridge to our right, and just barely peek in over the ridge line, was the biggest pair of brown eyes I'd ever saw. Only one thing livin' in those woods that big, but I knew there ain't no way it was a grizzly. From what little of the head I saw, it looked more like a gorilla but more human. Axe barked out some fierce warnings, but if I could hear the fear in him, I know that thing could too. For a second we actually thought that maybe the bastard got the message 'cause he ducked out of there faster than a French man runs from a fight, but ain't 2 seconds later he popped up again. This time though he weren't just peeking over, I saw now clear as day that standing up on that ridge was unmistakably the legendary creature Bigfoot. Now don't get me wrong, I ain't no pussy or nothin', but when that feller gave us a warning of his own I damn near passed out from fear. I ain't even had the time to soil myself before I'd seen Axe took off haulin' ass back way we came, and I figured it a pretty good idea to join him. Me and him tore through woods like drunk loggers, trippin' over every rock and tree branch along the way. At some point Bigfoot must have started chasing us, 'cause the whole time we're running, from right behind we'd hear low deep grunts and could smell the strongest scent of rotting garbage. When I finally made it to that wood's edge and broke through trees, I felt relief like no other, but I still ain't stopped running. Seems like Bigfoot don't like going past the tree line, 'cause he stopped his chase right there, but not before he let out the longest, loudest whistle as a sort of finale warning, I guess. For years after the run-in, me and Axe could hear knocks and bumps on our house every damn night. Guess he don't have any trouble leaving the woods at night. The noises stopped round the same time Axe had died. I'd let him outside one day to use the bathroom, but he just never ended up coming back. I say died and not missin' 'cause I went looking for him that same day and ended up finding him curled up at the base of a pine. Weren't no cuts or scratches on him, just a broken neck. I know Bigfoot's the one that killed my dog, and I'll be damned if I ain't gonna return the favor.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Part 2. Part 3. Part 4. I met Stacy, my wife, when I was in the 6th grade. We started officially dating in 8th grade, and we dated all through high school. Then just after graduation, she broke my heart. She wanted to go to college to find herself. I knew what that meant. I was taken completely by surprise, but she made it clear there was nothing I could do or say to change her mind. And believe me, I tried. More than I'd like to admit. So just like that, it was over. Over the next 2 years, I didn't hear from her at all. At one point, I did hear that her mother passed away, her father passed when she was young, but I never really found a good way to reach out. I went about my life, coasting through college, with a couple of short-term relationships here and there but nothing serious. I assumed she did the same. Then, one night I went to a local bar with a few of my friends and there she was. I was too embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't actually recognize her at first. It had only been 2 years, but her hair was now short, and I already had a few drinks in me at that point. It was only after she made her way across the bar to hug me that I fully comprehended who she was. It struck me as odd that she was back in town mid-semester, as this seemed like a strange time to fly across the country to visit home. But, we got to talking, and after a few drinks I thought nothing of it. We really hit it off that night. It was like she had never been gone. The feeling I had when I was with her. I joked about how she left me behind when she went off to college, hoping to ease any concern about whether I was upset, but she completely brushed it off. A little later I brought up a story about a time when we were in the 9th grade, and my mother dropped us off at a movie theater for a date. I could see the confusion on her face. She quickly explained that she had been in an accident her first year of college, and that she lost bits and pieces of her memory. The way she described it was that she basically couldn't remember some of the specific memories from her childhood, but she could remember faces and who people were. It sounded terrible and I didn't want to prod too much, so I dropped it. Things were so great. Years rolled by, we had 2 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom, and was so good with the kids. There were some ups and downs over the years, but things were generally pretty good. And then I got an invitation to our 10-year high school reunion about a month ago. I thought about not going, but after some convincing from my friends at work, I decided to go. Stacy had also planned to come, but we ended up getting into a ridiculous argument tonight beforehand, so she stayed behind. I don't quite know how to explain what happened tonight at the reunion. I'm still processing it. It seemed like it was going to be a pretty tame night. There were only about 40 of us that went. But then, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and I immediately felt what I can only describe as dread in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't quite comprehend what I was seeing. She looked so familiar. I knew exactly who she was, but my mind was having a hard time processing it. It was Stacy. The Stacy I dated in high school. The Stacy that dumped me after we graduated. She looked exactly as I'd expect, just grown up. But she didn't look like my Stacy. This wasn't the Stacy I married. This wasn't the Stacy that was back at home. Stacy, OMG Steve. I can't believe it's been 10 years. How are you? Tell me about your life. You just kind of fell off the map. What happened? Stacy, I'm doing well. I fell in love with California during school and decided it was where I was meant to live. This is actually the first time I've been back since my mom passed 9 years ago. There really hasn't been any reason for me to come back since, until now. I ended the conversation there, and immediately left. Part 1, You Are Here. Part 3. Part 4.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I was 6 years old when my mom and I moved in with Nana. Mom and Dad were always arguing, and sometimes there was hitting. So she took me and left. Sorry Nana, I said. She smiled and it warmed her. One thing about living there was I had no friends. There were no kids anywhere near our house. I had started primary school, but the few kids I played with there lived too far away. So I had to entertain myself. It was a great garden. Lots of space to run around, roll around, climb trees. There was even a blackberry bush. Nana said I was allowed to eat a few a day, but I had to wash them first because of bugs and bird poo. You also had to be very careful when picking them because they grew on thorny stalks. I had a football that I'd kick around sometimes. After I'd picked and eaten a few blackberries, having washed them under the outside tap, I looked around for it. It was floating on the surface of the pond. I tried to scream for Nana, but I kept swallowing mouthfuls of stagnant, lukewarm water. I panicked, my head dropping below the surface. I'd emerge briefly, feeling clumps of algae stuck to my face before going back under. Eventually, it went dark. And then it wasn't again. I was choking up water laying a few feet away from the pond, soaking wet. I took in long deep breaths as I stared into the bright blue sky. I closed my eyes and started to feel tears coming on. Then came a voice. Down here. Nice to meet you, Ben. I don't have a name, sadly. I frowned. Why not? Its front legs moved up slightly, like a shrug. It's just not something we do. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one of my kind who can talk like this. My mother couldn't have given me a name if she tried. I shook my head. No, I'm not. Everyone who I know can talk. Well, maybe you're special because you can hear me. I got a little closer. Can I touch your skin? Its mouth opened as it laughed. Why on earth would you want to do that? My friend Henry Collins said frogs feel slimy. Well, definitely not slimy, it said. Oh my, that tickles a bit, it said, laughing. I wouldn't say you're slimy, I said. But you feel kind of wet. And a bit squidgy. I shook my head. No, I did that myself. I was silly and fell in because I was too close. I paused and got lower again. Wait, did you see how I got out? It nodded and turned its head to the pond. Yes, that's my home. Please come and see me again sometime. I nodded. Sure. I don't think it will be too difficult for you. But, I'd love you to give me a name. I laughed. I won't, I promise. I waved. Bye Froggy. I said, giggling. It shook its head but laughed along with me. A few weeks passed. I'd spent plenty of time in the garden, sometimes near the pond too. But I didn't see the frog and it was a little disappointing. One day I came home from school. Mom couldn't always pick me up, so it wasn't unusual for her to arrange a taxi to collect me. I walked through the front door and could hear sniveling. What's wrong, Mummy? I asked. She held out her open arms and I accepted them, feeling my eyes fill up. Part of me knew already. Ben. I slowed to a normal pace and nodded, sitting cross-legged in front of him. Sorry, I was excited to see you. The frog hopped closer, then leapt onto my knee. It made me smile. Its little mouth smiled again. Oh my, I can't wait to hear it. I loved your grandfather, but the things I'd let him do to me. I never doubted you, he said. I'm proud to call myself Solomon. A few days went by and seeing Solomon was a given. I was happy to have him as a friend, and I appreciated that he didn't always treat me like a child. He'd tell me things as they were, truths that most adults would hide or sugarcoat. But I always felt he had an underlying responsibility to look out for me too. I was a child, and I could act like one. One day we were chatting about school. I was laying on my back and Solomon sat on my chest, like the first day I met him. He cut me off mid-sentence, tapping his little webbed foot. He turned his head to face the house. "Sorry, little one. Something's not right." I could see a change in his expression. He looked concerned. He had this amazing ability to show emotions like we do. My breathing started to get heavier and I felt butterflies in my stomach. Solomon hopped closer and rested a foot on my hand. "Jesus fucking Christ, Ben. She's not here, is she? The worthless bitch left you on your own. That's negligence. Leaving my fucking son unsupervised, who does she think she is? She's got you fucking wrapped around her little finger, hasn't she?" He started to step closer, I backed up. "What lies has she been feeding you, huh? Turning my own son against me." I slowly stepped back through the hallway as he edged closer. "Anyway, I heard the mother bitch is 6 feet under. There's gotta be some cash around here. That Scrooge hated spending money. Unless it was for a pack of John Player specials, ha." He smiled. "Well, I'll just have to keep looking on my own, then." "I hate you," I sniveled. "I wish you wasn't my dad." It was a miraculous coincidence, but he fell for it. I just stared at him, shaking. I opened my curtains just enough to see the rain coming down hard, then I watched in awe as the forks of lightning spread across the night sky. I blinked hard as the next crack of thunder struck, laughing to myself. As the next flash came I looked down to see Solomon's pond rippling. I thought about how happy he'd be swimming around in the rain. There came a loud crash from inside the house. Then I could hear muffled voices. I jumped down from my bed, my room illuminated briefly with the next sheet of lightning. I knew the thunder was coming, but it still made me flinch as I crept closer to my door. As I started to cry, my dad came into view. He was holding a hammer, the head of it a glossy dark red. He looked up and sneered as the lightning struck again, and the crash of thunder was like a starting gun. I grabbed onto his wrist for support. His clenched fist was just in front of my face. I wanted to try and bite it, but I knew I couldn't reach. So I did the next best thing. "Little one. Solomon." I cried, reaching out with my good hand. I held it upright and he hopped onto it with a croak. I sniveled. "How do you know?" "Because I'm special, remember? I also know you've broken 2 of your left toes. And your left wrist is fractured." I bawled, but it was mostly relief. I believed him. I got up to kneel and Solomon leapt from my hand. By that point I wasn't only shivering from fear, but cold. The rain wasn't letting up. "Please, little one. Be brave." I mustered a small smile and stroked Solomon on his back. "We make each other special, don't we?" "Fuck you," he screamed, getting to his feet. I gasped as I turned back to face the back of the garden. My little toes were so painful, but I still ran as fast as I had in the 100m race on my school sports day. At least it felt like it. But I knew my dad was twice, maybe even 3 times faster than me. It wouldn't take him long to catch up. Protruding slightly from the surface were 2 big, glowing eyes. Then they raised up slightly to reveal a wide mouth that was upturned in the corners, like a smile. As the thunder rumbled I heard a deep croak, and the pale flesh below the mouth inflated intermittently. The eyes were fixed onto mine, and with a final flash of light before I reached the pond, the large head motioned to the sky. All I could see was the very top of Solomon's head as my dad was pulled into the water, his lower leg submerged. I heard a loud croak as Solomon raised out of the water, then closed his mouth around my dad's waist. He smacked at Solomon's head as he struggled, but I could see him becoming visibly weaker as I heard the sound of crushing bones. "Do you mind if I take a look?" I stepped outside. There was no longer grass as you left the doorstep, but a modern patio with outdoor furniture. The old shed had been replaced with what looked like a small annex. There was a large trampoline in the center of the garden. 6-year-old me would have loved that. I got more comfortable and held out my hand palm side up. The frog willingly hopped on top. My heart jumped. I brought it closer to my face and studied it. It had been years since I'd seen Solomon, and with no offense intended, I wasn't sure I'd be able to tell him apart from any other frog. And given their short lifespan, he'd probably be long dead already. The woman in the house seemed genuinely warm, as I'm sure her husband is too. But I knew in my heart, if either of them turned out to be monsters, their children would be safe for as long as they lived here.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
For Sale, Haunted Furby, by Rough Arugula 8091. It started off innocuous enough. I had placed the Furby on the top shelf of a bookcase in my basement. I came down the other day to find it sitting on the floor. I figured it had fallen over in the night and had landed right side up. I put it back on the shelf and went on with my day. The next day I came down into the basement, only to find Furby sitting on the ground again. This time, it was further away from the bookcase. I rearranged the shelf so that Furby couldn't fall. I found it on the floor again 2 days later. We engaged in this back and forth for about a week before I relented and let Furby stay on the floor. It wasn't long after that I heard it speak. I just about jumped out of my skin when I heard "Who-by" coming from my pitch-black basement. Furby was sitting on the carpet in its normal spot, eyes open. I could see its beak slowly moving as a distorted "ite" emanated from the speakers within. I checked its battery compartment and sure enough there were 2 corroded AA batteries. I trashed the batteries and did my best to clean the corrosion out. A few days later, it spoke again. Inside the battery compartment were 2 fresh batteries. I must have replaced the batteries and forgot. I removed the batteries again since Furbies are known to never shut up until they're out of juice. Imagine my surprise when it speaks again. "Play, play, yumwa." Man, even without batteries it wouldn't stop talking. I eventually got annoyed enough to just throw Furby out. It was sad to see a childhood friend be relegated to the trash bin, but god damn was it getting on my nerves.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
This all started with a meme. That's how I met Milo. We were both in this chaotic group chat called BleedNet, just a random online space where edgy kids posted cursed images, late-night confessions, and weird internet rabbit holes. The admin was anonymous, the members unhinged. But it was fun, at first. It felt like a digital haunted house, if you know what I mean. I started DMing Milo after we both laughed at this dumb image someone posted, a grainy photo of a gas station with the caption, "Free meat inside." He seemed chill, into creepypasta, dark humor, and urban legends. We bonded fast. But then it changed. I messaged him right away, thinking it was a prop shoot or fake blood FX. I felt sick. Jay never came back online. The next morning, his sister called me, hysterical. They'd found his front door wide open. No sign of forced entry. No struggle. Just, gone. That night, I got a DM from a new account. "We told you we were local." Attached was a video. My stomach dropped before I even hit play. I recognized the room instantly, Jay's basement. I went to the police. I showed them everything, the chats, the video, the threats. They said the video was gone. That the metadata showed it was corrupted and unreadable. That I had no proof anything had happened the way I claimed. It didn't sound human. More like someone trying to mimic a laugh but getting it just a little too wrong, offbeat and breathless, like a dying thing learning how to enjoy pain. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. No number. Attached was a GPS coordinate. I knew I shouldn't. I knew I should send it to someone, anyone, but by then, my brain wasn't wired to trust logic anymore. I grabbed my jacket and a flashlight and drove. It took me to the outskirts of town, to an abandoned overpass near the old train yard. And there, hanging by wire from a broken streetlight, was Jay. You laughed too. When I looked up again, I saw something else, something tucked inside Jay's exposed ribcage, a flash drive. That last one. It had no thumbnail. Just a black screen with a blinking white cursor. I didn't hear the crawlspace open until it was too late. A figure dropped from the ceiling. I barely caught a glimpse, rubber mask, blood-slick hoodie, and a serrated hunting knife, but it was enough. I bolted for the front door, kicked it open, and ran into the street screaming. Breathing hard. I'm still watching it.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I felt groggy, and my eyes were kept shut by tape covering my eyelids. I tried to call out for help, but quickly realized I couldn't form any words, nor move a single muscle. Was I paralyzed? Had I been in an accident? My mind was too shattered, unable to recall even the simplest information. Prepare the device, Part 108, we don't have much time to get it in place, another voice said. A sharp pain shot through the back of my head, immediately followed by warm liquid trickling down my neck. I wanted so desperately to cry out in pain, but I could do nothing but listen to what happened as something dug deeper into my skull. Apply pressure right there, will you? Don't you see the bleed? The first voice said. His BP and heart rate are a bit high, but he's under for sure. Don't worry, another responded. While could hear and feel everything they did, I had no means of communication. Perforator drill. Shit, did you go too deep? Once the bone was cut through, the pain slowly disappeared. With the brain having no pain receptors itself, I could do nothing but listen to the sickly squishes as they rummaged around inside my head. Charged and ready, doctor. I felt a vague sense of pressure as something was pushed deep inside my head. Put the electrodes around the device entry, set it to 650 milliamps. Darkness. When I finally regained consciousness, I was lying in a hospital bed. A smiling woman stood in front of me. I recognized her as one of the prep nurses, thought I hadn't caught her name yet. Everything went great, Mr. Jones, we got it all, she said, ecstatic. It's alright, the drugs might make you a bit woozy, but you'll be good in another hour or so. Why yeah, quite a bit actually. We'll up the dosage of your pain medication in a moment. But first, let me give you the final part of your treatment. Now, this stuff burns a bit, he said, waving around the syringe. As he prepared to inject me with the contents of the syringe, my mind started to clear. The memory of my surgery returned with a blast, and I violently retracted in bed, ripping the foreline out with me. "What are you talking about?" Ethan said, visibly confused. As I said, perfectly normal. I calmed down a bit due to his explanation, and let him reset the 4 and finish the injection. It burned as the liquid entered my veins, searing up my arm and neck. I felt lightheaded. "All done," Ethan said, smiling. "You should rest now, you'll be here for observation for a few days. You'll be allowed visitors by tomorrow." Even the setup before surgery had been suspicious. Starting from a nothing more than a phone call from a Mr. Burke, representing a newly founded Artifex Pharmaceuticals. They were working on a new treatment for terminal cancer patients, he had said. The next week came and went. I was discharged with a bottle of pain medication to keep me going while I healed. Yet, I just couldn't shake that horrific nightmare from the day of the surgery. I tried to call the number they'd given me, but it continuously returned a busy signal. Confused, and haunted by the nightmare, I could do nothing but rest, and hope they'd call me back in for a checkup. "Benjamin, great to have you back," he basically shouted as I entered the office, embracing me in a rough hug. It was just vague, barely audible at first. I tried to ignore it, but Harrison immediately noticed something was off. "Are you alright? You look a bit pale," he said. "Yeah, I'm fine. Do you hear that?" I responded as the sound kept increasing in volume. "Hear what?" "Look, Benjamin, I know it's not easy to recover from such an ordeal. It's a burden, both mentally and physically. In fact, I once went through a similar situation, many years ago, and it left a scar on my self-esteem, like I wasn't strong enough to survive without help. It was odd though, thinking back. I was supposed to a terminal case, told me I'd be a goner within a year. Then, out of the blue, some guy showed up at my doorstep, proposing a miracle cure. I can't even remember their name, everything following the surgery feels somewhat vague, distant. What was the company called again, he asked himself. Artifex Pharmaceuticals. That's the same one that fixed me up, they said they were new. No sooner had I left the office, before the sound stopped. I let out a sigh of relief, and hurried back home to once more go over the documents. Nothing. If they had truly cured Harrison 15 years in the past, their drug had to be well past the experimental stage, and I demanded answers. The sound breaking my eardrums from within my own head, my awakening during surgery, and the fact that no one I knew had ever heard about Artifex Pharmaceuticals outside my treatment, it was all too much to handle. That night, I spent lying awake, unable to find any comfort in the fact that I was cancer-free. Around midnight, my phone rang, one of my old co-workers, whom I hadn't spoken to since my treatment. Dead, when, how? Apparently Harrison had suffered a brain hemorrhage from an undiagnosed brain aneurysm, not long after I left the day before. Just like that, he was gone. I asked the receptionist to speak to any representative of Artifex Pharmaceuticals. She claimed she'd never heard of such a company. When I then asked for one of the doctors, I realized I couldn't exactly remember their full names. So, I asked if anyone in the surgical department was named Ethan. After doing a quick search on the computer, she simply shook her head. He noticed my pained expression and stare. As suddenly as it had begun, the sound just stopped. The man in front of me fell over to the ground, briefly seizing before lying there, lifeless. He'd suffered a brain hemorrhage. At least that was as much information as I could get from the gym staff, but I knew it was more than that. The man had died just like Harrison, that horrific sound preceding his sudden demise. Following the gym event, I visited 3 separate doctors, begging them to have a look at my head, CT, MRI, whatever they could offer, I'd take it. I even told them about my cancer treatment, but no record of my hospitalization even existed. Well, Mr. Jones. Luckily we settled for the CT, because the MRI would have torn your brain to shreds. You really should have told me you had some kind of implant. Outside of that, the starburst basically made your scan unreadable. Excuse me? I said, confused, but not entirely surprised that something in there didn't belong. I'm sorry, a starburst is what happens when we put metal in a CT scanner, but that's far better than putting you inside a giant magnet, you dash. No, I mean, what implant? I interrupted. Well, have you been in any accidents, maybe a car crash or other type? Sometimes debris stuck inside you can travel through your blood vessels, regardless of where the original injury was. What exactly did they give you? He asked, sounding more curious than concerned. It was just an injection, I think, and it was only once following the surgery. Well, you have a scar for sure, but it's amazingly well hidden, never seen anything so small from brain surgery. I tried to explain my experience during the surgery to the best of my limited memory, but he couldn't help. He told me he'd look into some different pharmacological trials to see if anything fit my explanation, but he didn't seem very hopeful. He couldn't even remove the damn thing, claiming it sat too close to my brainstem, or something.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
People brought over baby clothes, a crib, a swing that plugs into the wall and jiggles, toys and shoes and diapers. A very weird situation to be in, for sure. But then, to put it plainly, things got weirder. I was in the grocery store, and the manager, a friendly older man, came up to me and asked about my sweet little girl. He asked if she liked the different formula he had suggested and if I wanted more. I just smiled. When I got home, I found formula in my grocery bags and an almost empty can in my cabinet. I don't even remember putting it in my cart. The thing is, everyone has been so nice to me, and the situation is just so odd that I started to go along with it. How's the little darling today? A neighbor would ask when I went to get the mail. Oh, she's wonderful. Sleeping through the night, I'd answer. Then a young woman that got coffee at the same place as me asked about a play date with her 9-month-old and my then 5-month-old. I sort of blew it off. Next time I saw her though, she talked about setting up another play date and how much fun our 2 darlings had. She showed me a picture on her phone. Aren't they just precious in this picture? Your little girl has the most beautiful blue eyes. Her dress really makes them pop. I'll text this to you. I looked at the picture and saw a chubby baby in a red shirt and blue shorts. It had dark hair and dark eyes. It was the only baby in the picture. I went home and opened my bedroom closet full of baby junk. I pulled out teddy bears and an unopened box with a changing table in it. I pulled out a shopping bag with new baby clothes. I dumped it out on my bed and looked through them. I found a light blue dress. A few weeks ago, I decided to call my mom. Oh, Pearl, hi. How are you? I asked. We don't talk often. I'm good, we're all good out here. She paused then asked, and how are you two doing? Us, too? I asked hesitantly. I know Mom. Oh, she's crying, I gotta go, I lied. The funny thing is, Breakfast at Tiffany's has been my favorite book since I was a kid. I'd always thought Holly would be a great name for a kid I would eventually have. Once she lays down it usually doesn't take too long, I replied. I went inside and looked through my mail. A bunch of junk, a few red envelopes. I put everything down on the kitchen counter and opened a cabinet to get out a cup. I heard some noises coming from my room. I paused and listened. I didn't hear anything for a minute, so I grabbed the cup and got some water from the sink. I heard something over the sound of the tap. Holly must be awake. No, I said firmly. Her smile wavered. You left your kid in her car seat in your car, he said again. I jumped up and ran outside. I unlocked my car and opened the back seat. How could I be so stupid? How fucked up am I to leave my kid in the car? But nothing was there. No kid, no car seat. I drove home.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
A Story to Scare My Son, by Oven Friend. Son, we need to have a chat about internet safety. I slowly crumpled down onto the floor next to him. His laptop was open and he was playing Minecraft on a public server. His eyes were locked into the action. Comments scrolled down the side of the screen in a chat box. Son, can you stop your game for a minute? He exited the world, closed the laptop, and looked up at me. Dad, is this going to be another cheesy scary story? Wahat. I faked hurt feelings for a second, and then grinned at him. I thought you liked my cautionary tales. He grew up listening to my stories about children who encountered witches, ghosts, werewolves, and trolls. Like many generations of parents, I used scary stories to reinforce morals and teach lessons about safety. Single dads like me should use all the parenting tools at their disposal. He scrunched his face a little. They were fine when I was 6. But now that I'm getting older, they don't scare me anymore. They seem kinda silly. If you are going to tell a story about the internet, can you make it really, really scary? I squinted at him incredulously. He folded his arms. Dad. I'm 10 and I can handle it. I began. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Colby. His expression indicated that he wasn't impressed with the terror of the introduction. He sighed deeply and settled in for one of Dad's cheesy stories. I continued. Colby went online and joined several children's websites. After a while, he started talking to other kids in-game and on the message boards. He made friends with another 10-year-old boy named Helper23. They liked the same video games and shows. They laughed at each other's jokes. They explored new games together. After several months of friendship, Colby gave Helper23 6 diamonds in a game they were playing. This was a very generous gift. Colby's birthday was coming up and Helper23 wanted to send him a cool present in real life. Colby figured it wouldn't hurt to give Helper23 his home address, as long as he promised not to tell it to any strangers or grown-ups. Helper23 swore he wouldn't tell anyone else, not even his own parents, and set about mailing the package. I paused the story and asked my son, "Do you think that was a good idea?" "No," he said, shaking his head vigorously. In spite of himself, he was getting into the story. Well, neither did Colby. Colby felt guilty about giving away his home address, and his guilt began to grow. And grow. By the time he put on his pajamas the next night, his guilt and fear were larger than anything else in his life. He resolved to admit the truth to his parents. The punishment would be steep, but it was worth it to have a clear conscience. He squirmed in his bed as he waited for his parents to tuck him in. My son knew the scary part was coming up. In spite of his tough talk, he leaned forward wide-eyed. I spoke quietly and deliberately. He heard all the noises of the house. The washing machine bounced around in the laundry room. Branches scraped against the brick outside his room. His baby brother cooed in the nursery. And there were some other noises he couldn't quite pinpoint. Finally, his dad's footsteps echoed down the hall. "Hey Dad," he called out nervously. "I have something to tell you." His dad stuck his head in the doorway at a weird angle. In the darkness, his mouth didn't seem to move and the eyes were all wrong. "Yes, son," the voice was way off, too. "Are you okay, Dad?" the boy asked. "Aha," sung the father in his strangely affected voice. Colby pulled his covers up defensively. Is Mom around?" "Here I am." Mom's head popped into the doorway below Dad's. Her voice was an unnatural falsetto. "Were you about to tell us that you gave our home address to Helper 23? You shouldn't have done that. We told you never to give out personal information on the internet." She continued, "He wasn't really a kid. He just pretended to be one. Do you know what he did? He came to our house, broke in, and murdered both of us. Just so he could spend some time with you." My son screamed too. He twisted his hands defensively over his face. But we were just getting started with the story. After I finished the story, my son was visibly shaken. Between ragged staccato breaths, he stammered, "But Dad, my name's William." I gave him a classic dad wink and tousled his hair. "Of course it is, son." William ran up the stairs to his bedroom in a fury of sobs. Edit, thank you so much for Gold and the October Trophy. If you are interested, I blog about single parenting tips and some of my other activities at www.ovenfriend.com.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
Part 1. Appreciated everyone's attention and patience last time, but I can't say I have much else nice to give you. Now for the rest of that night and Marcus's story. ///. I figured that Mama wouldn't be back until dawn, and by then, Ryder and I would have left the creek. I could sneak my dirty clothes into the laundry bucket without her noticing. I grabbed an old orange t-shirt and a dirty pair of sweatpants before pulling on my zip-up jacket and rubber rain boots. I placed one hand on the door before realizing that the winter night wasn't going to offer any visibility. I grabbed a flashlight from our kitchen drawer and smacked it a couple times before I got it to switch on. Once the feeble light proved to still be working, I shoved it into my jacket pocket and made my way out. Ryder was also holding the old paint bucket and lid that we always used to carry the little crustaceans in from my grandma's kitchen. "You're not cold?" I asked, shaking my head as I quietly closed the trailer door behind me. No, his grin was infectious, and I was soon smiling with him. "Now come on, we ain't got that much nighttime left." Normally we would have sprinted down the hillside towards the creek bed, but with the darkness as it was, I was happy to just follow behind Ryder as he kept up a moderate pace. The top of the hill was flat, but the way down to the water was rocky and a bit uneven. I reached the edge as Ryder disappeared down the rock wall, climbing slowly but steadily. I put the flashlight under my arm as I began my descent. The rocks were cold and still sort of wet, which didn't exactly help my tiny fingers. I had to dig into the dirt with my nails just to not collapse as I inched my way down towards the sound of the water. The flashlight's light was measly, but enough that I could vaguely see my surroundings. After a few more moments, I let my impatience get the best of me and I unhooked myself from the wall. My boots hit the ground from about 5 feet up, a bolt of pain shooting through my ankles. I grimaced and tried to put on a brave face. Ryder was standing several feet away at the creek bed, but his back was turned. Despite the sound of the running water and where he was facing, I could still hear his voice as clear as day, slurred "s" and all. "Come on, the crawdads are all in there." He raised his arm without looking and pointed to the right where the wooded area sat. In the darkness the trees were tall and menacing. We had never even touched that area before, my mother warning of ticks and other varmints that would give us diseases. She and my grandparents had also made it perfectly clear, time and time again, that they did not want us going in that forested area. It was one of their hard and fast rules that we hadn't ever really thought of breaking. The one time one of our footballs ended up over the hill and in those trees, the two of us had just accepted it as a loss. Ryder turned slowly. Even in the thick darkness of that cold farmland, where only an outline of him was really legible, I remember that I looked for the lights of his eyes to distinguish them on his face, but there was nothing there. His hair blew in the wind, but his face was a pitch-black slate. His posture was slack. His arm had fallen back to his side, dangling uselessly. I thought I could see his fingers twitching around the handle of the bucket. It took several seconds before I could close my mouth and start to walk after him. I was losing confidence in this whole trip, but the number of questions swarming around in my brain was enough to propel me forward. "What do you mean?" I asked, yelling slightly so he would hear me. No matter how fast I walked, I just couldn't reach him. The back of Ryder was always at least 15 feet ahead. "This is a bad idea, and you still haven't told me why you moved away." Ryder's voice trailed behind him. I couldn't believe he wasn't stumbling over his own bare feet. "They're all in here, Marcus. They don't come down from this part until it gets warm." "It ain't warm. We'll find them at the center where the creek heads off." The further we went, I kept my light on Ryder's back and legs, following him as we ducked under branches. The trees hung low to the ground, almost as if they were dangling their own arms in our way. The third time I got smacked in the face by twigs, they got into my mouth, and I sputtered and dropped my flashlight. We were already so far into the tree line that I couldn't figure out which direction was which, but by the time I recovered and picked my light back up, Ryder was gone. I swallowed the immediately blooming panic in my chest and called out, "Ryder." Deeper into the woods, in the other direction, the sound continued at an even pace. "Ryder?" I wanted to shout, but my voice came out as a miserable squeak. I pointed the flashlight all along where I thought the sound was coming from, but I couldn't see anything except ice and trees. Thud. It was crying. The soft but unmistakable sound of a child crying echoed in the distance. It wasn't a screaming tantrum, but an agonizing weep that did not stop. From where I was standing, I got the sense that I was very close, and there was a familiarity to the cry that made my heart sink. "Ryder?" I tried again, actually managing a yell this time, but the crier didn't even flinch, and they didn't stop. I couldn't go home. Ryder was still out here. He had probably fallen and really hurt himself, maybe while looking for me. I stood frozen for several more seconds before gripping the handle of the flashlight and taking a deep breath to calm myself. I walked forward slowly, trying to get closer to the sound of crying. My pace was snail-like, and even as my heart began to pound faster and faster, I was determined to find my friend. I don't know if I was walking for minutes or even hours, ducking under branches and blinking to try to find any sense of shape or color in that void, but eventually I came upon another hill. At that point, Marcus was sobbing in his chair. He hiccuped, barely able to speak. I honored his word and didn't dare interrupt the story. When he was able to continue, his voice returned in a choking whisper that I had to lean forward to even hear. I looked down, and caught the top of my friend's blonde hair shimmering in the light. He was on his knees in the freezing water pool, sitting over something and making all kinds of distressed noises, coughing and hacking as if he were choking on something. The water flowed around him with little effort, his shivering frame only wrist deep. The crawdad bucket was resting on the grass several feet away, tipped over and empty. I really didn't want to move. It felt as though I was staring down at the back of his head for centuries, shaking in the winter cold. My lips tried to form words and failed several times over. But when I had walked several steps and not come across him, I stopped. I didn't see him anywhere in the water. In a bit of a panic, I began to shine my flashlight in a circle around me, trying to take in the area to see if he had moved once more. The rest of the forest circled this small inlet pool. Trickles of the creek proceeded onward, but the majority of the water sloshed around where I was standing, ankle deep and freezing. My stomach hurt from how scared I was. "Ryder!" I shouted out. I didn't even care that I was beginning to cry, but it didn't help my vision one bit. It was as if the crawdads had finally begun to answer me in place of my friend. It was a loud reply. They were screeching, and it was an uncomfortable sound amongst the sheer silence of the rest of the woods. I was not interested in them anymore. I just wanted to find Ryder and get out. Even through the tears, I could see a giant downed and dead tree cutting over the edge of the grass and into the water. A victim of the winter weather. It was a diagonal line down into the creek bed. With my squeaking boots, I stepped a little closer. With a shaking hand, I dragged the minuscule circle of light down to the end of the tree, the part that met the water head-on. I couldn't stop the gasp that fell from my mouth. The crawdads were swarming. I had never seen so many of them in one place, hundreds of them gathered around the downed branches as if something had attracted them there. It wasn't possible that there could be that many in this creek. The chirping was incessant, but non-threatening. They didn't seem to notice that I was there. They were preoccupied, climbing out of the water towards. I remember slowly raising the light. What I saw first was a shock of blonde hair. What I heard first was another painful moan. Ryder was splayed on his back over the downed tree's trunk. It looked as if he had collapsed and landed there from a high place. Other than his lips, he was not moving. His arms were dangling over the side at an uncomfortable angle. His legs were wedged underneath the foliage on the other side of the tree. His eyes were unfocused but gazing up to the sky. I didn't get it. I had seen him in the water, how did he get to the top of that small hill or the big tree? All of these pieces of information and concerns came and went through my brain in a matter of seconds, but all of it took a backseat to the very first thing that turned my stomach. My friend was covered in crawdads. He continued to moan, bloody mouth trying to forcefully echo the words he could no longer muster. Off, hurts. Tears streamed down the broken remnants of his face. I watched as several of those awful fucking creatures reached greedy pinchers toward his eyelids. But the clicking sound only grew louder. I had to open my eyes again. "Marcus," he wept. There was nowhere left for his voice to come from, throat torn into strings of meat from endless tearing claws. It was just in my head. The animal part of me won. I turned and I ran. At that part in his story, Marcus had started dry heaving, and only stopped when he hit this final sentence. He was quiet, face puffy from sobbing, but he was seemingly unable to force out anything else. I sat there, stunned by everything I had just heard. I couldn't speak, mind swimming with thoughts and fears and plenty of anything else that I couldn't quite name. As if he was also uncomfortable with the silence after several minutes, Marcus spoke up again. His voice was gravelly with pain. When I made it to high school 5 years later, I finally gained the courage to ask my mother the truth about my friend. She finally gave me what all they knew. They thought Wyatt kidnapped him and fled the state. They spent months trying to find Mr. Poole both in Ewing and outside it, and some law enforcement in Florida did find him the next Memorial Day, wrapped around a telephone pole with enough alcohol in his blood to poison 3 men. Ryder wasn't with him. Marcus shook his head. I never told Mama, my grandparents, my teachers, anyone. Leah knows I had a traumatic childhood, but she doesn't know much more than that and my mother's first name. I never allowed her to ask me questions about any of it. His laugh was hollow. I thought it was a nightmare. I was traumatized. I lost my friend, needed to cope, all that nonsense. Even recently, I had begun to believe that it was all a nightmare. Time was cold and static. Only the sounds of the TV next to us showed that it was still moving. I only spoke again when I began to hear Marcus mumbling something to himself. "Do you?" The question cut like a knife. My eyes suddenly locked back into Marcus's, and they were wide. "I don't think you do get it." I wanted to move on. Anger wasn't an emotion I expected, but it poured out of him. It was as if a switch had been flipped. He was staring at the wall behind me as he spoke. "Leah's great. My life is great. My job is better than I should get, but shit doesn't happen that way. Of course it doesn't. I was fucking stupid to think I could get over this. Because the moment I got comfortable, the moment I started thinking that I had actually gotten over whatever hallucination I had produced from my fear and the subconscious realization that my friend was dead, that's when I, his voice was raising, but it suddenly cut off there at the end. "When you what?" I tried to put confidence in my voice, but all I managed was a croak. "It's not a nightmare, Sean. It never has been. I heard him again, last night even." That awful belly laugh returned. He was scratching the leather off the arms of the chair. He was outside my window again. He was asking me if I wanted to go hunt crawdads. It's been 2 weeks since then, right up to the 30-year anniversary of the first time he asked me. I wanted him to reply, but my last words hit and silence overtook us. It stayed silent for what could have been 10 seconds or 3 goddamn hours. All I could see was the fizzing cogs in Marcus's head working again. He continued to scratch the leather arms. He stared at me with a whole swirl of emotions. When he spoke again, it was quiet, but poisonous. "No, not crazy, just traumatized. We can get you help." "You aren't listening. I'm not the one who needs help." He shot forward, glaring at me. I was all he had. His mother was never there. He had no other close friends. He came to me, he keeps coming back, because I was all he had. He's in my mind and at my windows because I'm all he has. Something demented had taken over him. The light in his eyes was composed of pure fear and rage. I failed him. I failed my friend. "Marcus, don't." "No." He screamed. Every bit of emotion that he had bottled up through his storytelling exploded at that moment. He was on his feet, towering over me, hands wringing and arms flailing wildly. "You don't understand after everything I said. I saw him. He came to me for help, and I failed him. For 30 years I've failed him." A noise at the living room window made us both jump. I turned my head to see nothing but snow and ice pattering against the glass. I ran to the kitchen to get bandages, finally ending the recording on my phone to call for help. While I tore through Leah's cabinets for her first aid kit, I heard him mumbling and crying in the living room. The shattering continued, a single man's bloodied fist breaking the glass with repeated blows. The wind howled through the open window, but I could still hear Marcus's wails clearly. "He's still out there, he's still out there." Short of actually driving to his hometown, I've done just about all I can stomach. I've been skipping out on onions in my burgers. I've been drinking a little too much when I do get out with friends, and I've found myself avoiding questions about the subject when they ask. I thought getting the story off my phone and into the world would give some kind of relief, but it hasn't. My parents now claim that all of their bad feelings about the guy were warranted, but I still can't find it in myself to dislike Marcus, even after everything that happened that night. Leah thinks he's crashing out and my parents think he's full-blown crazy, but I think there's a nugget of truth in every man's wildest stories. To be clear, I don't believe him, but I also don't think a man that tortured created a folktale for nothing. I'll never forget the pain in his eyes, and every single word he spoke that inevitably landed him in the hospital. I wasn't perfect that night, but I don't know if there's that much I could have done differently to help him. Those thoughts are enough to make me sick.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I bought a mannequin, It Got Weird, by Marky T45. It was a cold October day, the vibrant orange leaves a stark contrast against the gray pavement. My brown slippers blended with the fallen foliage, my bare, hairy legs barely able to stand without wobbling in the breeze. The string of my stained bathrobe, some of its patterns matching the cold bottle of Jack Daniels bumping against people, didn't matter. None of it mattered as I stared at the mannequin. It had no facial features, but the rest of its body was identical to Jessica's. The nights we spent cradled together, nothing but our naked, entangled bodies providing warmth, that soothing warmth that gives you a sense of peace. All those memories flooded into me as I stared at it. I needed it, and taking a swig of courage, it was going to be mine. "Sir, can I help you? You've been staring at our display for 10 minutes, a bloated man stepped out of the building, his voice stern but still carrying that customer service cheer. Hopefully, all that work I did as a realtor would pay off. "I want the mannequin." The words felt like slobber as they fell out of my mouth. A look of pity and disgust came upon his face before he took a breath and adopted a look of judgment, a common one for me to see. "Sir, you cannot have our display mannequins. Now please go, or I'll call the co." I interrupted him, shoving $500 cash into his face, a mix of fake and real tears streaming down my face. Please, I need her again." I'm not sure if it was the cash, the disgust, or the disruption to his business, but he took my money, undressed the mannequin, and I walked out. I took a victory shot as I headed back home with what my drunken mind called a new Jessica. I remember getting back to my house and nothing else from that moment. I barely remembered any of that as I woke up the next morning with a glossy white mannequin standing by my bedroom door. It almost scared the crap out of me, but I remembered enough that I could get past it to the bathroom. Overall, the house smelled nicer. I went to my washer and dryer to throw my clothes in a hamper, stumbling as I took my shirt off, ready to throw it in until I realized the hamper wasn't where it usually was. I looked around for a moment before looking toward my bedroom door as my body was drained of the warmth that the alcohol provided. I saw the door open and the light on. I opened my eyes to see the mannequin's hand come to a standstill as they approached my face. If it wasn't for the fake gleam of the plastic from the lighting, it might have pulled me from this mirage. I stared at the motionless figure, it was perfectly still. I closed my eyes for a few seconds before opening them up again, and it was in the same position. I was drunk. I missed Jessica so much that I was beyond hammered, and I was imagining this mannequin was real. Excuses, 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 that's all I needed. My nightmares are usually darkness, nothingness. But this was so colorful. I didn't see people or things, but colors. Reds and oranges swirling together, a beating rhythm making me feel like I was surrounded in warmth, the two colors entangled themselves over and over again, like a shifting fire. This is what I wanted. This was the exact same feeling of warmth of my final day with Jessica. My eyes were blurred and having a hard time focusing because of the gleaming light hitting my eyes. I couldn't pull my head away as something was stopping me from pulling away. I couldn't move most of my body, my legs were wrapped around something. The only thing I had was my hands. "Get off of me," I groaned in more annoyance, though fear was building. With a shove and yanking away, I was freed, and with some blinking, I saw the mannequin that I was sleeping beside, and it had no clothes on it once more. I rushed to the bathroom, dry heaving as nothing was in my stomach anymore, washing my face, trying to wrap my brain around what I had let into my home. I stared into my reddening eyes. "Get a hold of yourself," I stated as I finally saw the husk of a man I was. The only thing that pulled me out of it was when the faucet in the sink started, and I rushed over to see the mannequin standing over the sink, pouring out all the alcohol that was inside the house.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
Attention shoppers, please hide at the back of the store immediately, by Blair Daniels. The back of the store. I whispered to Daniel. Don't they mean the front of the store? To pay for our stuff? But apparently, the disaster was just beginning. I glanced around, but the other shoppers were just as confused as I was. An old lady looked up at the ceiling, scrunching her face. What the hell? A dark-haired woman asked her boyfriend, pushing a cart full of garden supplies. A tornado? It was definitely storming outside. I'd seen the black clouds roll in from the east earlier. But it didn't look that bad. Do not stay out in the open. I repeat, do not stay out in the open. There was a pause. Then, an explosion of sound, as everyone began to mobilize. Carts rolling, panicked voices, feet slapping on the floor. Stay away from windows and doors, the voice continued on the loudspeaker. And do not attempt to exit the store. Daniel shook his head. Big open areas aren't good. I'm going to check in back, see if there's a break room or something. You stay here, okay? I nodded. A tornado. A real-life tornado, like you see in the movies, plowing through our town. It was so unfathomable. We were New York natives, transplanted here to Indiana only 6 months ago. I'd never been in a tornado watch my entire life. Daniel jogged back into view. Everything's locked up, he said, as he joined me on the floor. But listen. Fairview's a big town. The chances that it'll hit this Walmart. I think we'll be okay. Do not stay out in the open. Do not make yourself visible. That includes security cameras. Please move to a spot that is not visible to any cameras. I frowned. What does that have to do with tornadoes? The four of us crouched on the floor, next to some demented-looking Easter bunnies. I'm hungry, Jackson whined. I grabbed a bag of colorful chocolate eggs and ripped it open. Here. Candy. Happy. I whispered, thrusting them into his hands. Then I leaned back against the metal shelves, panting. But I didn't have long to rest. A mechanical whine overhead, and then the voice came through the speakers again. What the fuck? That had nothing to do with keeping safe in a tornado. We should make a run for it, Daniel whispered to me, starting to stand. Maybe it's still coming. I know what they're saying doesn't make sense but to go outside. But the next words from the intercom changed my mind. Let's go. There was a tree at the border of the parking lot, under a street lamp. The doors didn't open. Daniel slammed his body against the door. It rattled underneath him. I tried to squeeze my fingers into the gap between them, to try and pull them apart. They locked us in, I whispered. I want to go home, Jackson said. Tucker was beginning to fuss too, making little noises like he was about to start full-on wailing. I turned around. A Walmart employee. No. Fingers locked around my arm and yanked. Come on. Daniel shouted. I sprinted after him, deeper into the store. Tucker stared at me over his shoulder, and Jackson ran as fast as his little feet would take him. I was vaguely aware of the slap 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 sound behind me, but I didn't dare look back. Daniel ran into the clothing area and I swayed, dodging circular racks of t-shirts and wooden displays of baby clothes. He skidded to a stop and ducked into the dressing room area. "In here," he whispered, motioning at one of the rooms. We piled inside and locked the door. "You listen to me very carefully," I said, crouching to his level. "You have to be absolutely silent. Do not say a word. Okay?" "I'm going to try to call 911, Daniel whispered, transferring Tucker to me and pulling out his phone. He tapped at the screen, then frowned. We don't seem to have any service." "I don't." Thump. Under the gap of the dressing room door, men's feet in black shoes. They slowly took a step forward, deeper into the dressing room. "Don't move," I whispered, holding Jackson. The man took another step. Tucker let out a soft cry. The man stopped. His feet turned, pointing at us. "No. No, no, no." Tucker let out another cry, louder this time. My nails dug into Daniel's hand. "No." A hand appeared. It slowly pressed against the floor, stained with blood. And then his knees appeared, as he lowered himself down to the gap. Could he fit under? The gap wasn't small, it was like the stall door to a bathroom. If he flattened himself against the floor, there's a chance he could fit under. I watched in horror as his stomach came into view. His blue Walmart vest, as he lowered his body to the floor. Then he pushed his arm under the gap and blindly swept it across the floor. As if feeling for us. I opened my mouth to scream. "No, no, no. Please make your way to the front of the store and make your final purchases. We will be closing in 10 minutes. "What?" A strange dragging sound followed. As if someone was dragging his body out of the dressing room area. I stared at the door, shaking, as Tucker's cries rang in my ears. But he didn't come back. Shaking, I finally got up and unlocked the door. The store looked completely normal. People were lined up at the cash registers, placing their goods on the conveyor belts. Employees were scanning tags, printing receipts. People walked towards the glass doors, and when they did, they slid open. As we slowly walked towards the exit, I spotted the older man who'd warned us about the tornado earlier. What was that?" I asked, unable to keep my voice from shaking. He shrugged. "I guess the tornado missed us. What a miracle, huh?" Giving us a smile, he disappeared out the glass doors and into the night.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
When Did You Ever Question a Dating App? By VirtualFan7775. When did I ever question a dating app? Never. Not until it led me to Alex. Our initial chats were easy, almost too easy. She flowed well. We talked about her work, her hobbies, what she was binging on Netflix. I found myself subtly guiding the conversation, nudging her towards topics that revealed more about her habits, her routines, her vulnerabilities. I tilted my head, my smile, I imagined, perfectly serene. Just a dream. Weird, right? Anyway, you were saying something about your cat. She didn't hear the rest. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. I have to go, she stammered, backing away from the table. The fear in her eyes was a delicious, almost palpable thing. That night, I didn't sleep. I was too excited. Every shadow was an ally. Every sound outside was just the world waiting. I kept picturing Alex's face, her fear, the way her body had tensed. A new photo in my gallery. One I had taken. It was a selfie. Of me. Sleeping. A single, human finger bone. Smooth, polished. A memento. It hadn't just learned her dreams. It had been in her room. And it wasn't just watching. It was feeding.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
The day was supposed to be the same as any other. Even the air was the same. I was sitting in the last stall of the third-floor men's room, hiding from a world of spreadsheets and deadlines, procrastinating. The low, monotonous hum of the ventilation system filled the air, a futile attempt to overpower the faint but persistent smell of cheap disinfectant and something vaguely organic beneath it, a scent that always lingered in these corporate sanctuaries. From the next stall, I could hear the muffled tapping of a phone keyboard, a rhythmic sound that was the universal language of paid idleness. You know the feeling. The tranquility of a corporate afternoon, disturbed only by the echo of a dripping faucet in the otherwise silent room, lined with sterile white tiles. My mind was empty, filled with nothing but dull boredom and thoughts of the approaching weekend. Then it happened. Distant, muffled sounds, first a single, sharp scream, quickly cut off as if muffled by a hand. Then a bang, hollow and heavy, like a filing cabinet falling over. And then, without any transition, the piercing, shrieking wail of the fire alarm. My first reaction wasn't fear, but irritation. Another drill. We'd be standing outside in the rain again, waiting to be let back to our spreadsheets. The sounds were filtered through layers of concrete and steel, distorted and confusing, as if coming from a great distance, or from a strange dream. And then, as suddenly as they had begun, they stopped. The alarm died mid-cycle, leaving a phantom ringing in my ears. The screaming had been silenced. A deep, unnatural quiet fell. It wasn't a peaceful silence, it was heavy and oppressive, amplified by the dead acoustics of the tiled room. This sudden shift from noise to silence is a classic horror technique for building suspense. In that silence, for the first time, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The environment itself had become my adversary. Every sound, every echo, was amplified and distorted by the hard, non-porous surfaces. The restroom wasn't just a place where I was stuck, it had become an active participant in my terror, a psychological weapon that intensified every wave of horror. I can't, Carl. There's something at the door. What's happening? His reply came in fragments, interrupted by static and his own ragged breathing. Every word was torn from his lungs with immense effort. They're not people, Mark, they're not people, they're tearing flesh. God, they. His voice broke in a fit of coughing, wet and ragged. I got a scratch, just a scratch, it's nothing, but, it burns like hell. In that moment, I understood. The walkie-talkie wasn't a tool of rescue. It was a direct line into the heart of the apocalypse. Instead of connecting me to the outside world, it trapped me in an intimate auditory relationship with a man who was dying and turning into a monster. Every crackle, every distortion of his voice, pulled me deeper into despair. I wasn't just a listener, I was a witness. Trapped with Carl's dying voice in the receiver, my senses overloaded. I started to notice smells that weren't there before, the coppery tang of my own fierce sweat and a faint, sweetish smell of rot that seemed to rise from the drains. Every detail in the room seemed menacing and hostile. The chrome soap dispenser cast distorted reflections. The grout between the tiles looked like dark scars. In a desperate, irrational attempt to do something, anything, to keep from thinking about the sounds outside, I looked into the toilet bowl. And there, deep in the drain, wedged in the bend of the S-trap, I saw something that didn't belong. A piece of plastic wrap. With a revulsion that mixed with desperate curiosity, I reached in and pulled out a small, slimy, plastic-wrapped piece of paper. It was covered in shaky, desperate handwriting. Rules. 1. Do not flush between 3 and 4 o'clock. It can hear. 2. When the lights flicker 3 times, close your eyes. Do not open them until you hear the singing. 3. The voice on the radio is not your friend. But it's all you have. 4. Do not trust the mirrors. They lie about who is behind you. 5. If the stall door moves on its own, offer it a name. Not your own. I tested the rules immediately. Carl. I whispered into the radio, my voice trembling, I found a piece of paper here, with rules on it. Do you know anything about it? And then his decomposition began. I was his sole witness, a helpless listener as his mind and body collapsed in real time. His transformation occurred in stages, which I followed through the distorted speaker of the walkie-talkie, and it was terrifyingly similar to clinical descriptions of delirium and psychotic states. Phase 3, Paranoid Delirium. The infection attacked his mind. He described hallucinations, shadows moving on the monitors, whispers in the static. His paranoia, a key symptom of psychosis, turned against me. Why are you in that bathroom for so long? Are you waiting for them? Are you with them? I can hear you whispering to them. I know you're with them. His speech was now a mixture of lucid warnings and psychotic delusion, making him a completely unreliable narrator of the outside world. The third flicker. Absolute, tangible darkness. In a spasm of pure terror, I obeyed. I squeezed my eyes shut. It was an act of surrender, a relinquishment of my rational mind to the cryptic authority of that piece of paper. I was left in a deafening silence. I stared at my reflection in the small piece of polished metal on the toilet paper dispenser. I remembered Rule 4, do not trust the mirrors. They lie about who is behind you. For a split second, in my mind, ravaged by stress and suggestion, I saw a figure in the reflection behind me. A tall, dark silhouette. I spun around, nothing. Just white tiles. The ambiguity of whether it was a real supernatural event or a stress-induced hallucination was the core of my new madness. My perception was forever broken. I could no longer trust my own eyes. The handle moved slightly on its own, slowly, as if someone were gently testing it. I remembered the last rule, if the stall door moves on its own, offer it a name. Not your own. Carl. And then, there was only silence.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Pa said it was an omen. The kitten made a noise, halfway between a squeak and a cough. Pa paused. We were silent for a bit whilst we thought on this. We didn't know either, but no one could doubt that it had to mean something. 2 heads, 2 sets of genitals, he said. Omen was a 5-figure paycheck waiting to happen. We refused. Omen was ours. In the end, Omen would end up outliving that vet, and part of me, although I know it can't be true, believes that Omen always held a grudge against him for what he told us that morning. The vet made a joke in poor taste as we left. Might last a little longer. You never know, 9 lives in all. 18 lives. And number X200B. 2. We spent the next few months hand-feeding Omen, both of their heads desperately hungry. Ma would often joke that it was like they had 2 stomachs, with the amount of milk they'd get through. We'd take turns to feed in the night, and even though I was much too young to be staying up that late, they could see how much this cat meant to me, and they'd give me an hour or two after dark. But they didn't mind, really. Omen was our favorite. 3. I was so absorbed in the rodent's strange biology I completely ignored the sound of my ma and pa coming to stand behind me, hands on hips, watching me watch it. "I think it's a message," Pa said. Both of Omen's heads mewed in sync, as if to agree. We went on holiday as a family, and as much as it pained us, were unable to bring Omen. Omen knew something was up when they saw us putting our clothes in bags, and when we all left at once, and they tried to sink their claws into our shoes to beg us not to go. But we had to, and we did. When we returned, sunburnt and at ease, we found that Omen had taken the time to smash every single clock in the house. "He thinks we're hungry. Trying to feed us," Pa said. "Disgusting. Doesn't look half bad." 6. We lived in a big house, and family and friends would often cycle through, staying in various rooms when they encountered problems of their own, or just needed a roof over their head for a while. Our uncle came to stay with us during the last days of his life. There was no more modern medicine could do for him, and he told everyone he wanted to die with dignity. Around 24 hours before he died, Omen took up a vigil by his bedside. We'd been advised by the nurses that we should keep Omen away, that having a cat that close would only cause trouble, that you never knew where your pet had been. Omen mewed softly, pleadingly. The sound grew, and grew, until eventually, Omen was silent. And number X200B. 7. Ma had twins. And, God, Omen loved the twins. From the moment they came home, Omen was all over them, transfixed by their angelic little faces, their impossibly thin wisps of hair, their laughs and their cries. I could almost hear Omen's thought process as both heads stared up at the newcomers. 9. Our neighbors told us that they found Omen at the scene, lapping at the pool of blood as if it was cream in a saucer. And number X200B. She looked like a ghost dragged through a swamp. Her skin was so pale you could see the mass of veins underneath contracting like small worms, and when she spoke it made my skin hurt. "Touched by the devil," she said. We told her that they were ours, that they were family. "I'll see you soon," she said. And number X200B. One night I heard a noise from the kitchen. Upon investigating, I found that someone was banging against the door. I recognized the voice. The woman from the week before. She was hammering the door now with her fist, frantically. "Let me in, let me in, let me in," she said, over and over and over again. Pa eventually came down, and found me hiding under the table. Omen was sat, facing the door, tail flicking from side to side. Pa said that in the following silence, he could hear their heads chattering away to one another. He said they sounded serious, concerned. 12. I was brushing my teeth the following week, just after my shower, when I heard some scratching at the door. I tried to ignore it. Sometimes Omen would do this, beg to be let in after you'd had a shower so they could drink the water around the drain, but Ma had said we had to stop Omen from their more unsavory habits in case we had guests. I kept the door firmly shut. I could have sworn the door was shut, but in my reflection, behind me I could make out the door start to open, slowly, fraction by fraction, and my hand stopped moving the brush, leaving it stuck in my mouth like a cocktail stick, when I saw a hand slowly emerge from the door in the reflection. A hand, and then a face I recognized, a gnarled and ancient face, all gums and loose skin, and I could see the woman slowly force her way into the room in the mirror, and, falling backwards, it was all I could do to try and grab the door, slipping on the handle. It took me a while to absorb my surroundings, for the adrenaline to wear off. I had thrown my alarm clock. A heavy, brass thing that was so loud it was impossible not to wake up. Omen was sat by the shattered clock, their two faces reflected endlessly in the dozens of mirror shards that covered the floor, blinking and preening themselves, before stepping closer and pushing their forehead against mine. Just for a moment, I felt as if I'd touched something old and dark and so hot, and then Omen pulled away. And number X200B. 13. Ma said she'd found the man by our gate, staring into Omen's eyes, all four of them, without blinking. Said that she told the man she'd called the police, and that he should get off our property this instant, but the man stayed still. Wouldn't take his eyes off Omen. Spoke strange words to himself under his breath. The strange man made local headlines, filling his pockets with rocks and throwing himself into the river. They said he'd finally lost it, that the weight of whatever he'd done had finally caught up to him. And, as if to confirm my suspicions, Omen coughed up a wet, blonde hairball. And number X200B. 15. Omen discovered catnip and spent 3 days in a daze, like some sort of feline junkie, until Ma caught them staring at their own reflection. Embarrassed, Omen quit their newfound habit there and then. The twins laughed. "It's just like yours. I've never seen a real one," she said, feigning surprise. And number X200B. Omen spent their last 5 nights with each one of us. First Pa, then Ma, then the twins for 1 night each, and last of all, me. They slept by my side, purring like kindling whenever I'd tickle one of their chins. We both knew that their time was nearly up. They were growing old, and what had once been muscle and fat had quickly become skin and bone. Before they passed, they made one last, slow circuit of the house, checking behind each door and under each bed, as if to say, to us and to the twins, "See, you're safe now." And it was a surprise to none of us, when, a month later, we saw 2 green buds rising from the soil. 10.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in the coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
Room 733, by the Dalek Emperor. The Suicide Room. That's what they called room 733, as if I didn't have enough to worry about on my first day as a freshman. We had assigned to dorm room 734, which, it turns out, wasn't one of the nice add-on rooms in the South Hall. No, we found ourselves in the older wing of the building on the 7th floor. I wasn't too bummed out, though. At least they'd honored my request to room with my best friend. Lydia and I spent most of the morning moving ourselves in. By the time our resident advisor came by, I was taping up posters and Lydia was reading. "Wow, you girls really work fast," she said, taking in our made beds and hung up clothes. "Is this the Kraken from Pirates of the Caribbean?" Lydia glared at her over the top of her book. "So anyway," the RA continued, I know our hall isn't as new as the South Hall, but trust me, there's a lot of history here. This building is almost 60 years old. Well, people were smaller in the 50s. Beth shrugged. Really? Lydia said flatly. Oh, you don't want that room. Beth interrupted. There were a couple suicides in there. A hanging and a jumper if I remember right. They're not assigning anyone to that room. Anyway, I'd just like to remind you that this is an all-girls floor and guys are not allowed up here after 11. I'm going to call her dumbshit Beth. Lydia, seriously. Suicides? Oh, Becca, relax. Every college campus has a few suicides. Yeah, but in the same room? Lydia sighed. Really, who cares? It's not our room. Since Lydia was an outgoing and friendly person, we made friends at lightning speed. There were a lot of parties in those first few weeks, at one of which Lydia inevitably met a guy. I'd known the girl since we were in diapers, so I fully anticipated her having a boyfriend by the end of September. His name was Mike and he wasn't anything special, just your standard frat pledge douche canoe. One night in early October I was woken up by a loud, grinding sound. I sat up in bed and strained to hear it again. Lydia was also wide awake and listening. It wasn't unusual for there to be noise in the hallways since other people came in at all hours of the night. But this sound had definitely come from next door, the corner room. Is that Dash? Yeah, Lydia whispered. That's the window next door. Slam. Who's in there? Who is hazing freshmen? I shrugged. Slam, it's shut. Becca, I love you, but that was fucking stupid. I threw a pillow at her. Well, whoever it is, go tell them to knock it the fuck off. Grind. I'm an art major. You're a political science major. You go lay down the law. Slam. I have class at 7:30. I whispered. Ugh. I got out of bed and stomped to the door, threw it open dramatically and went down the hall to pound on the door to room 733, which simply said, supply room. People are trying to sleep, please fucking stop. I said when there was no answer. Slam. Dude, seriously. I sighed. I stepped back from the door and immediately noticed problem. Room 733 was padlocked shut from the outside. I hurried back to my room. Lydia scoffed and rolled over to go back to sleep. You should have been a drama major. We didn't hear the window next door again that night, but the next morning you could clearly see from outside that both windows in the corner room were now wide open. Come in, I said without looking up from the screen. A moment went by and then I heard the knocking again. I jerked my earbuds out and slammed the laptop closed. I turned around, come Dash. It had come from the other side of the room, the closet door. It was the closet that shared a wall with room 733. Nothing. Silence. I walked over to the closet door and grasped the handle. Her voice came from the doorway, behind me. I let go of the doorknob and stumbled back, wide-eyed. Lydia threw her stuff on the bed and turned to me, crossing her arms. What? Why? Because someone was knocking on the door. Jesus, Becca. Lydia rubbed her forehead and walked over to the closet, throwing open the door. There was nothing there but clothes and boxes. She made a swipe of her arm as if to say, what now? We glared at each other until our little standoff was interrupted by the timely arrival of Ian. Which room? 735. Or the empty one? The empty one. Lydia emphasized. Nah, just 733. Honestly, I was surprised when I heard they were opening the North Hall this year. They told us we were the biggest incoming freshman class in 20 years. I said absent-mindedly. Yeah, I heard that, too. You know, you could request a room change. Ian sat down on the bed next to me and I leaned against his shoulder. Yeah, but they wouldn't keep us together. Lydia cut in. Becca and I have been best friends for 15 years. We can't room with other people. So should we just keep living here, next to Satan? I glanced at the closet door again. Lydia shrugged. At least we'll have some stories to tell after graduation. These aren't the kind of stories I want to tell. A few days later Lydia began to believe my closet story. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone whispering. I looked over at Lydia, who was already staring at me with wide eyes. She slowly brought a finger to her lips. I listened intently, trying to hear what the voice was saying and where it was coming from, but I couldn't understand even one word. I got out of my bed and tiptoed over to Lydia's. The whispering was definitely louder over there, but then she shared a wall with room 733. I listened harder. What the hell? Lydia leaned over and put her ear up to the wall. The whispers suddenly stopped and I leaned closer. Suddenly there was a loud bang from the other side. Lydia immediately recoiled and clutched her ear in pain. Someone was in there. Suddenly more angry than scared, I again threw open our door and stomped over to the supposedly empty supply room. I banged on the door loudly, not caring who else I woke up at this point. Silence. And then the doorknob started to turn. I noticed Lydia peeking her head out of our room. She held up her hands as if to say what happened. The moonlight, which had been providing enough light to see into the room, suddenly vanished and I saw only pitch black inside. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust my night vision. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them, a large yellow eye was looking back at me, only a few inches away from my face on the other side of the door. I screamed and woke up half the dorm. There was no denying that things were escalating. The next morning Lydia and I put in dorm change requests with resident services and hoped for the best. In the meantime, we agreed to never be alone in our dorm room at night. Either we both spent the night at home or neither of us did. We started spending most nights with our respective boyfriends. I told Ian everything that had happened and he suggested I maybe talk to the campus paranormal society. I hesitantly made an appointment and Lydia and I met with a small, cleanly dressed kid named Craig and 4 of his colleagues the following Tuesday. Is that all? Craig asked. Yes. I said slowly. Would you mind waiting out in the hall for a few minutes so that I may confer with my colleagues? Sure, Lydia smiled indulgently and stood up. Whatever you need. Go where? I asked. We loitered out in the hallway for another 15 minutes before Craig came out and asked us to come back and take a seat. Yes, answered one of the not Craigs. That's goes to the layperson. Mistaking Lydia's frustration with despair, Craig rushed right into his speech. Don't be afraid, ladies, we're going to take care of you. It's true that spirits can be quite a headache if you don't know how to exorcise them, which is why it's good you came to us. Suicides almost always result in angry ghosts, they need revenge. Revenge on whom? I asked. On other students. Perhaps this particular spirit was bullied into taking his own life and now seeks to torment others. We can take care of this for you right away, all we ask is a small donation to the society, Craig continued. We honestly didn't realize that room was having this much activity. It's really very exciting. Great, well, thank you for your time, Lydia said as she grabbed my hand and pulled me out of my chair. Do you want to set something up for this weekend? Craig asked. Tell you what, we'll call you. Lydia hurried me out of the room wearing a weary look and we didn't speak again until we were almost to the admin building. That was a waste of time. She said. So you don't think it's I was having trouble even saying the word, it sounded so ridiculous. Ghost? Fine, I sighed. Then what do you want to do? Just keep sleeping at Mike and Ian's until we get reassigned? I just want this to end. Lydia crossed her arms and stared straight ahead. We all wanted this to end. Even if living next to that fucking room wasn't scary, it was sure as hell distracting. Alright, well, I mean we're probably safe during daylight hours, so as long as we don't spend nights there we should be okay. Our room is only ghost adjacent after all, and our new assignments will come through soon. I checked my watch. Fuck, it's almost 2. Shit, really? I gotta go. Mike got accepted to Sigma Chi and he's getting initiated today. The girl at the desk waved us forward. I hadn't even realized we'd reached the front of the line. Let me know what they say, Lydia said as she ran out the door. The girl at the desk eyed me suspiciously as I approached. Hi, I'm Dash. You're the girl trying to move out of 734 in Riley, aren't you? She'd caught me off guard. Yeah, one of them. How'd you know? You saw someone. Well, your rooms aren't ready yet, but I've pushed them through as a priority. For right now you're stuck, though. There just isn't anywhere else to put you. Really? I asked, hesitantly. Ugh, say no more, Alice rolled her eyes. Great, Alice said, and smiled. I was early to Taylor, but then so was she. I told our story for the second time that day and Alice wasn't afraid to interrupt with questions, though her queries didn't betray her thoughts. When I was finished she leaned back in her chair and sighed deeply. We aren't ever there at night, but during the day we've heard scratching on the wall, really quiet whispering, and sometimes we still hear the window opening and closing. In broad fucking daylight. However, every time I look up from the street the windows to 733 are open. Alice nodded. Well, for the record, I don't think you're in any danger. As much as it sucks, you guys are simply a casualty. You just need to stay out of room 733. I snorted. Are you kidding? I would never go in there. I believe that you believe that. But this thing, whatever it is, it's tricky. Manipulative. A liar. And it's smarter than you. I'll try not to be offended by that. You shouldn't be. What do you think it is? 5? I thought it was 3. They don't, apparently. That's why it's a supply room. So, what does it want? Alice shrugged. Chaos. Death. Souls. Who knows? No one even knows what it is. Okay, so what do we know? I nodded. All I know is what's rumored to be in the evidence files. All the suicides were found with pictures or writings that were considered unspeakable at the time. They contained horrible, evil things that would make you physically sick to read or see, they say. And these people, they drew them. They wrote that stuff. Yep. Whatever is in that room drove them mad. That's fucking terrifying. Jesus. No, I mean, Jesus, you're talking about an exorcism. Alice shrugged. Maybe. The rumor in the 70s was that this all started with a Ouija board game gone wrong in 1961. Really? That shit's made by Hasbro. We need to talk to him. I need to know what the fuck is happening, or I won't be able to live the rest of my life as a well-adjusted person. I suppose we can try to chase him down on campus. We can try. Lydia and I had seen little of each other since we continued to sleep in other dorms. I went back to our room twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Usually the other room was silent, but that didn't make me feel better. I could always sense something on the other side of the wall, somehow watching me. It felt like the calm before the storm. Since the silence was unnerving me, I threw my iPod on the docking station and turned up AC/DC. I told her. Jesus. What do you want to do? She asked. Ian made me a scotch and coke. It was the first of many. I hit end and threw my phone in my bag. No wonder Lydia was pissed. This was not good. Not good at all. I found Ian inside and asked him to take me home. I was suddenly very stressed, very tired and very drunk. When the alarm went off at 6 a.m., it took everything I had to pull myself out of bed. I got dressed in the clothes I'd worn the night before and shuffled my way across campus to the atrium. Alice was already there with a black coffee in hand. I figured you'd need this, she laughed. Your texts. Oh, God, yeah. I pushed my sunglasses higher up my nose and pulled my hood lower over my eyes. Theoretically, we would know a lot more if we knew what it was. And we can't know what it is without knowing how it got here. And that is why we need Moan. What time is he supposed to get here? Actually, 20 minutes ago, Alice said, grimly. It was another half an hour before we resigned ourselves to the fact that Mr. Moan had snuck around us as usual. We went to the front office hoping to beg again for an appointment with him anyway. The woman at the admin desk regarded us coldly. Tom isn't coming in today. Or any other day for that matter. He quit yesterday. Looks like you won't be harassing him anymore. Well, you won't get any of his personal information from me, she said snidely and walked away. They did? Yep. I got the notice when I checked my work email this morning. You're going to Morton and Lydia is going to Tinsley. Oh, thank God. Thank fuck. Even look at his dumb fucking face anymore, so I'm going to head home. Don't worry about me, I'll be okay. I'm drunk enough to sleep through any bullshit from next door. I'm just so fucking pissed off right now. I would honestly rather deal with dumb shit Beth than Michael. My parents must be siblings because I'm that fucking retarded Benson. Let's hang out tomorrow. Love ya. God damn it. Lydia spent the night in our dorm. She's safe though, right? As long as she doesn't go into 733. She won't. I thought of the always open large windows of the corner room. If nothing else, the mere thought of those would keep Lydia the hell out of that room. Good. Well, since we have nothing else to do you want to go look for theology books in the library? It's pretty much the only thing open right now. There wasn't much. We read everything we could, but it either wasn't relevant or wasn't in English. We returned to her desk 30 minutes later. The occult? Ah. Her voice trailed off. Yes, I do. Over there to the left of the reference section. I don't think she likes the look of us, Alice whispered as we walked away. It is, I said. It's not, Alice answered simultaneously. It's personal research. Research? What kind of research? The older woman suddenly looked very uncomfortable and started fidgeting with a stack of books on her desk. We may have something on seances in dash. Ms. Stapley, we're researching what happened in Riley in 1961. Alice interrupted. And also what's been happening there ever since. Well, it's no secret, is it? A student committed suicide in that room. Dreadful but not unheard of on a university campus. I leaned over her desk. Well, I'd love to, but they assigned my friend and me to the room next door. Maybe you can forget about all the suicides, but we can't. It won't fucking let us. Alice sighed. I'm really sorry. I didn't know. Alice sighed but resigned herself to a nod. We wouldn't learn anything more here. Still, it was quite a breakthrough, at least we had some information now. Miss Stapley, I asked the tired, old woman at the desk, why did you refer to the windows in 733 tiny? Because I've seen those windows and they're huge, like 5 feet tall. Dear, you're thinking of the corner room, that's the supply closet. Room 733 is next door to that. Yes, well, it is now. When they built the additional rooms onto the south hall, they moved all the room numbers down. Oh my God. I suddenly felt very hot and very dizzy. That sneaky fucker, Alice whispered next to me, her skin paling. Lydia. We took off across the campus at a dead run, witnessed only by the few bleary-eyed students on their way to morning classes. When Riley finally came into view, I stumbled on the pavement as my blood turned to ice. From our vantage point we could clearly see the windows of the corner room were closed, the first and only time I had ever seen that way. And the window to my room was open. We ran into the lobby, pushing past several latte-sipping, UGG boot-wearing freshmen who had just gotten off the elevator. I hit 7 and watched the doors close more slowly than they ever had before. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. Alice, how the fuck did this happen? I don't know. I don't fucking know. She's been in there all night, Alice. In our room. Alone. Alice shook her head but had nothing to say. When the doors finally opened on floor 7, we saw a quiet, deserted hallway. I ran toward my room with Alice right behind me. Rounding the corner, I threw open my door hoping it wasn't locked. And it wasn't. Lydia looked back at me. And for one breathless moment, cruel glimmer of hope crossed over her tear-streaked face. But it was too late. The next second, she leaned forward so slightly, and she was gone. She screamed the entire way down. Alice ran to the ledge where Lydia had just been while I stood motionless. She stuck her head out the window and looked down just as a different kind of screaming started from the bottom floor. Alice closed her hand over her mouth and pulled her head back into the room as tears of shock ran down her ghost, white face. The screaming from outside got louder as more people saw what remained of my best friend on the cold pavement. I leaned back against the dresser and slumped to the floor. A falling death. Lydia never wanted a falling death. I absent-mindedly picked up one of the pictures that were strewn all over the floor. It was a picture of Lydia's mother. She was dead. I picked up another picture. It was Lydia's baby sister. She was dead, too. There were dozens of pictures just like it all over the floor. Lydia has been busy last night. As for the things depicted in them, I cannot tell you. Lydia was a talented artist and I only saw a few before I got sick on the floor next to me. Alice was standing in the doorway yelling something down the hall. I don't know what she was saying because all I could hear was a high-pitched whine in the room. Suddenly a piece of paper slid out from under the crack in the closet door and glided across the floor toward me. I picked it up and studied it for a moment. This was drawn by Lydia too, but it wasn't like the others. It was a picture of the closet from my exact vantage point. In the drawing the door was cracked and there was something looking back from the darkness. I put the paper down and studied the closet. The door was cracked open just like the picture. I squinted my eyes and tried to see inside. Just as I started to distinguish the defined lines of a long face looking back at me, Alice pulled me to my feet. I never went back into that room. My parents moved my things and I spent the rest of the semester in an apartment off campus. I transferred to an out-of-state school for my spring semester and finished my degree there. This year life and work got in the way and I called much later than usual. I was put on hold immediately. Resident services. A man finally answered. Were you the one asking about open rooms in Riley? Approval for what? I said slowly. We're opening up the 7th floor.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.